You have been taught calmness the wrong way. They told you it means never feeling angry, never getting tired, and never being affected by difficult people. But if that were true, why do small words still hurt? Why do delays still frustrate you? Why does life still test your patience when you are trying so hard to stay peaceful? The truth is, staying calm is not about pretending nothing bothers you. It is about learning how to meet every test with awareness, with breath, with wisdom, and with a mind that no longer breaks so easily. Buddhist teachings show us that patience is not weakness. It is quiet strength. The strength to pause before reacting, the strength to see anger without becoming anger, the strength to let one difficult moment pass without giving it power over your whole day. And as you listen tonight, something in you will begin to settle. The fire will cool, the tension will loosen. Your mind will become clear, like still water after a storm. This is not just about patience. This is about becoming peaceful when life gives you every reason not to be. Are you ready? Let's begin. There is always a moment, so small you almost miss it, a moment where everything inside you begins to rise, where your chest tightens, your thoughts speed up, and your body prepares to react. Most people never notice this moment, and because they don't see it, they lose control before they even realize it has begun. But something is about to change for you, because once you become aware of this hidden space, you will never experience your reactions the same way again. You have already begun to understand that staying calm is not about pretending or forcing yourself to be peaceful. It is about learning how to meet life differently. And now we step into the first and most important practice, the one that quietly sits at the center of all patience. The one that gives you control when everything around you feels chaotic, the sacred pause before reaction. There is a silent space that exists between what happens to you and how you respond. It is not loud, it does not announce itself, it does not beg for your attention. In fact, it is so subtle that most people live their entire lives without ever noticing it. They move from event to reaction instantly, as if pulled by invisible strings. Someone speaks harshly, and they respond with anger. Something goes wrong, and frustration takes over. A delay happens, and irritation fills the body. It feels automatic, almost like there is no choice involved. But there is. The pause is where that choice lives. When something triggers you, your body reacts first. Your heart rate changes, your muscles tighten, your breathing becomes shallow. This happens before your mind even catches up. It is a survival response, something that has been wired into you over time, but just because it happens does not mean you must follow it. The sacred pause is the moment where you interrupt that automatic pattern. It might be 1 second, it might be half a second. But in that small space, you have the opportunity to step back from the wave that is rising inside you. You begin to see what is happening instead of being consumed by it. At first, this will feel difficult. Your mind will still want to react quickly. It will tell you that you need to respond immediately, that you need to defend yourself, that you need to fix the situation right now. But this urgency is often an illusion. Most reactions that happen instantly are not wise. They are emotional. They come from habit, not clarity. When you pause, even briefly, something powerful begins to happen. You create distance between yourself and your reaction. And in that distance, you regain control. Think about how many times you have said something you later wished you could take back. How many times you acted out of frustration and then felt regret afterward. These moments often happen because there was no pause. The reaction came too quickly, without awareness, without reflection. The sacred pause protects you from this. It gives you the chance to respond instead of react. Responding comes from awareness. Reacting comes from impulse, and this difference changes everything. When you begin to practice this, you will notice that your reactions start to slow down. You will feel the emotion rising, but instead of immediately acting on it, you will observe it. You will feel anger, but you will not become it. You will feel frustration, but you will not be controlled by it. This does not mean the emotions disappear. It means you are no longer owned by them. There is a deep sense of freedom in that. One of the simplest ways to enter this pause is through your breath. The breath is always available. It is always with you, no matter where you are or what is happening around you. When you feel yourself being triggered, bring your attention to your breathing. Take one slow, deliberate breath in and then release it gently. This single act can break the chain of automatic reaction. It may seem too simple, but that is where its power lies. The mind is used to complexity. It wants solutions that feel big and dramatic. But real transformation often comes from the smallest shifts, repeated over time. The breath anchors you in the present moment. It pulls you out of the rush of thoughts and brings you back into your body. It gives you something stable to focus on while the emotional wave begins to settle. As you continue this practice, you will start to notice patterns within yourself. You will begin to see what triggers you most easily. Certain words, certain behaviors, certain situations. Instead of being surprised by your reactions, you will become familiar with them. And when you are familiar with something, it loses its power over you. You start to recognize the early signs of irritation before it grows into anger. You feel the tension building, and instead of ignoring it, you acknowledge it. You pause, you breathe, you give yourself space. This space is where your wisdom lives. Without it, you are driven by habit. With it, you are guided by awareness. There is also something else that begins to change. Your relationship with time. When you are reactive, everything feels urgent. You feel like you must respond immediately, that there is no room to wait. But when you practice the pause, you begin to see that not everything requires an instant response. Some situations benefit from silence. Some words are better left unsaid. Some actions are wiser when delayed. You begin to move at a different pace. Not slower in a weak way, but calmer in a grounded way, and people will notice this. They may not understand it at first, but they will feel it. There is a certain presence that comes from someone who does not react impulsively. It feels stable, it feels safe, it feels strong, because it is. The sacred pause is not about withdrawing from life. It is about engaging with life more consciously. It allows you to be fully present without being overwhelmed. It allows you to experience emotions without being controlled by them. Over time, this practice becomes more natural. What once required effort begins to happen automatically. You find yourself pausing without thinking about it. You find yourself observing instead of reacting. And in those moments, something remarkable happens. You begin to trust yourself. You trust that you can handle difficult situations without losing control. You trust that you can face challenges without being shaken. You trust that you can remain calm even when life tests your patience. This trust builds a quiet confidence within you. Not the kind that needs to prove itself, but the kind that simply exists. And from this place, your responses become clearer, more thoughtful, more aligned with who you truly want to be. You are no longer reacting from old habits. You are responding from awareness. This is where real change begins. The sacred pause is not something you master overnight. It is something you cultivate, moment by moment, breath by breath. There will be times when you forget, times when you react before you remember to pause. That is part of the process. What matters is that you return to it. Each time you pause, you strengthen that ability. Each time you observe instead of react, you deepen your awareness. Each time you choose calm over impulse, you reshape the way your mind responds to the world. And slowly, without forcing it, patience begins to grow, not as an effort, but as a natural state. Life will still test you, people will still challenge you, situations will still arise that push your limits. But now, you will meet those moments differently. You will see the pause, you will step into it. And in that space, you will find something that was always there, waiting quietly for you to notice: your power. Something subtle has already begun to change in you. You are no longer rushing blindly into reactions. You are starting to notice the space before them. That quiet pause is becoming familiar, and with it comes a new kind of control. But now a deeper question appears. What exactly are you pausing from? What is this force that rises so quickly, so powerfully, that it tries to take over before you even think? There is something inside you that feels intense, urgent, and sometimes overwhelming. It can make your voice sharper, your thoughts louder, your body tighter. And when it comes, it feels personal, like it is you. But what if that is not true? What if what you have been calling your anger is not actually who you are? There is a shift here that changes everything once you see it clearly. It is not about stopping anger. It is about understanding it in a completely different way. Anger does not arrive quietly. It enters like a storm, fast and forceful. One moment you are calm, and the next moment something inside you feels heated, restless, ready to react. It can feel so immediate that you assume it must be you. But Buddhist wisdom invites you to look closer, to step back just enough to see what is really happening. Anger is not your identity. It is an experience passing through you. Think about how many emotions you have felt in your life. Happiness, sadness, fear, excitement, frustration. Each one appears, stays for a while, and then leaves. Anger is no different. It follows the same pattern, but because of its intensity, it feels more permanent than it actually is. When you say, "I am angry," it sounds simple, but it creates a deep attachment. It turns a temporary experience into a definition of who you are in that moment. It locks you into it. It gives the emotion more power than it deserves. But when you shift the language, something changes. Anger is here, not "I am angry." This small change creates space. It separates you from the emotion. You are no longer inside it. You are observing it. That observation is where freedom begins. When you start to see anger as something that visits you instead of something that defines you, your relationship with it transforms. You no longer feel the need to fight it or suppress it. You also no longer feel the need to act on it immediately. You simply allow it to be present without giving it control. This is not about denying anger. It is not about pretending it does not exist. It is about recognizing its nature. It arises, it stays for a while, and then it fades, just like a visitor who comes to your door. Some visitors are welcome, some are not. But no matter how they arrive, they do not live there permanently unless you let them. Anger becomes a problem when you treat it like a permanent resident. When you build a story around it, when you feed it with thoughts, when you replay the situation again and again in your mind, you are inviting it to stay longer than necessary. But if you treat it as a visitor, something temporary, something passing, you stop feeding it. And without that fuel, it loses its intensity. There is something important to understand here. Anger often feels justified. Your mind quickly creates reasons for it. It tells you that someone was wrong, that something unfair happened, that you have every right to feel the way you do. And sometimes those reasons are valid. But the question is not whether the anger is justified. The question is whether holding on to it is helpful. Most of the time, it is not. Because anger, when held onto, begins to affect more than just the moment it was triggered. It spills into other areas of your life. It changes how you speak, how you think, how you see others. It becomes a filter. And when that happens, you are no longer seeing clearly. Seeing anger as a visitor allows you to acknowledge it without letting it distort your perception. You can still recognize when something is wrong. You can still respond to situations that need attention, but you do so from a place of clarity instead of emotional heat. There is a difference between responding from awareness and reacting from anger. Awareness is calm, it is steady, it sees the situation for what it is, Anger is fast, it is loud, it pushes you toward immediate action, often without considering the consequences. When you stop identifying with anger, you give yourself the chance to choose which one you want to act from. Another important aspect of this teaching is understanding that anger is often not just about the present moment. It carries layers from the past, old experiences, unresolved emotions, patterns that have been built over time. Sometimes what you are reacting to is not just what is happening now, but everything that has been stored inside you. This is why certain situations trigger stronger reactions than others. It is not just the event, it is what the event represents to you. When you see anger as a visitor, you can start to explore it instead of being consumed by it. You can ask yourself questions without judgment. What is this feeling trying to show me? Where is this coming from? What part of me feels threatened or hurt right now? These questions are not meant to analyze or overthink. They are meant to bring awareness, and awareness dissolves confusion. The more you observe anger in this way, the less intimidating it becomes. It loses its ability to control you. You begin to see its patterns, its triggers, its rise and fall. You become familiar with it. And familiarity reduces fear. Instead of being overwhelmed when anger appears, you recognize it. You know what it is. You know it will pass. There is also a physical side to this. Anger lives in the body as much as it lives in the mind. You can feel it in your chest, your stomach, your shoulders. It creates tension, heat, movement. When you identify with anger, these sensations feel like they are consuming you. But when you observe anger as a visitor, these sensations become something you can notice without reacting to. You feel the tightness, you feel the heat, but instead of acting on it, you stay with it. You breathe, and slowly the intensity begins to decrease. This is where the practice becomes real, not in theory, but in experience. Because it is one thing to understand that anger is temporary. It is another thing to sit with it without reacting. But every time you do this, you strengthen your ability to remain calm. You are training your mind and body to respond differently. You are showing yourself that you do not have to follow every emotional impulse, and this builds a deep sense of stability within you. There is also something else that begins to shift. Compassion. When you stop identifying with your own anger, you start to see that others are also dealing with their own emotions in the same way. You begin to realize that when someone acts out of anger, they are also caught in that moment. They are not fully aware. They are reacting from their own patterns, their own experiences. This does not mean you accept harmful behavior, but it changes how you see it. Instead of taking it personally, you see it as a reflection of what they are experiencing internally. And this understanding reduces the intensity of your own reaction. You no longer feel the need to match their anger with your own. You can remain calm, even when they are not. This is where patience deepens, not as something you force, but as something that naturally grows from understanding. You begin to see emotions, both yours and others, as temporary movements rather than fixed identities. And this changes how you interact with the world. You become less reactive, less defensive, more grounded. There is a quiet strength in this, a strength that does not need to prove itself. A strength that remains steady even in difficult situations. And as this continues to develop, something else becomes clear. You are not your thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are the awareness that experiences them. This realization is simple, but it is powerful, because once you truly see it, you stop being controlled by what passes through you. You become the space in which everything arises and fades. And in that space there is calm. Not forced calm, but natural calm, a calm that remains even when emotions come and go. This is what it means to stay patient, not by eliminating anger, but by changing your relationship with it. You allow it to come, you allow it to go, but you do not become it. And in doing so, you discover something that was always there. a steady, unshaken presence beneath it all. The next step goes even deeper, because even when you see anger as a visitor, there is still something else that happens inside your mind, something subtle that keeps the cycle going if you are not aware of it. And once you see it, you will begin to understand your thoughts in a completely different way. And now that you have seen anger as a visitor, not your identity, another hidden doorway opens, because anger rarely arrives alone. Before it becomes a word, before it becomes an action, before it becomes regret, it usually begins as one small thought. And that first thought can either pass like a cloud or become the beginning of a storm. There is something very powerful about the first thought that appears in your mind when life tests your patience. It comes quickly, it feels true, it feels urgent, it often sounds like a command. They disrespected me. This should not be happening. I need to say something right now. I cannot let this go. And because it appears so fast, most people believe it without questioning it. But Buddhist wisdom teaches us to look at this moment more carefully. The first thought is not always wisdom. Many times, the first thought is habit. It is the voice of old conditioning. It is the echo of past wounds. It is the mind repeating what it has practiced for years. When someone annoys you, the first thought may be judgment. When someone delays you, the first thought may be blame. When someone corrects you, the first thought may be defense. But just because a thought appears does not mean it deserves your obedience. This is where the art begins. You do not have to fight the first thought. You do not have to feel ashamed of it. You do not have to pretend it never came. You simply let it pass. That sounds simple, but it is one of the deepest practices of patience. Because most suffering does not come from one thought appearing. It comes from the second, third, fourth, and fifth thoughts that we build on top of it. The first thought says, "That was rude." Then the next thought says, "They always treat me like this." Then another says, "People never respect me." Then another says, "I should put them in their place." Now the mind is no longer seeing the present moment. It is building a whole world from one spark. And before you know it, the body is heated, the voice is sharp, and the heart is trapped inside a story that may not even be fully true. Letting the first thought pass means you stop the chain early. You see the first spark before it becomes fire. You notice the thought without making it your master. A thought can enter your mind without becoming your direction. This is something many people never learn. They believe that because a thought appears, it must mean something deep. But the mind produces thoughts constantly. Some are useful, some are fearful, some are kind, some are harsh, some are old memories wearing new clothes. You are not required to follow all of them. This is why awareness is so important. When the first thought appears, awareness gives you the power to say, "I see you," not with anger, not with fear, just with calm recognition. I see this thought. I see this judgment. I see this urge to react. And once you see it clearly, it begins to lose its grip. The thought may still be there, but you are no longer inside it. You are watching it. And when you watch a thought, you are already larger than the thought. You are already free in a small but powerful way. The first thought often carries emotional energy. That is why it feels convincing. It does not come like a quiet suggestion. It comes with heat, pressure, and certainty. It makes you feel like you must act now. But urgency is not always truth. Sometimes urgency is just the mind trying to protect an old wound. Someone speaks sharply, and the first thought says, "They are attacking me." But maybe they are tired. Maybe they are afraid. Maybe they are speaking from their own pain. Maybe they chose poor words, but there is no need for you to hand them your peace. This does not mean you excuse everything. It means you do not let the first thought make the whole decision. There is great maturity in waiting for the second kind of thought to arise, not the second reactive thought, but the deeper thought that comes after breathing, after pausing, after returning to yourself. That thought is usually softer, clearer, wiser. The first thought may say, attack back. The wiser thought may say, ask what they meant. The first thought may say, this is unbearable. The wiser thought may say, this is uncomfortable, but I can stay steady. The first thought may say, I need control. The wiser thought may say, I need patience. This is why you must not treat your first thought like a final answer. It is often only the opening noise of the mind. Wisdom usually arrives after the noise has settled. In Buddhist practice, thoughts are often compared to passing clouds. The sky does not panic when a dark cloud appears. It does not chase it. It does not argue with it. It simply allows the cloud to move through. The sky remains open. The sky remains spacious. The sky does not become the cloud. Your awareness is like that sky. The first thought is like a cloud. If you hold on to it, it seems heavy. If you identify with it, it darkens everything. But if you allow it to pass, you begin to see that it never had the power you gave it. This practice is especially important when life tests your patience, because impatience loves the first thought. It feeds on it. It grabs it and says, yes, this is the truth. React now. That is how small moments become big problems. A person cuts you off in traffic, and the first thought creates anger. A message is not answered quickly, and the first thought creates insecurity. A plan changes suddenly, and the first thought creates resistance. Someone disagrees with you, and the first thought creates pride. But if you let that first thought pass, the moment remains smaller. It does not grow into unnecessary suffering. You begin to see that many things are not as personal as your first thought claims they are. This is a major step in staying calm. The mind often takes life personally. It turns delays into insults. It turns mistakes into disrespect. It turns silence into rejection. It turns uncertainty into danger. And if you believe the first thought every time, you will live at the mercy of stories that may not be true. Buddhist patience asks you to slow down enough to see the story forming, not after it has taken over. Before, right at the beginning, that is the art. There is no need to punish yourself for having reactive thoughts. This is important. Some people begin this practice and become frustrated because harsh thoughts still appear. They think, I should not be thinking like this. But that is just another thought, another layer, another form of struggle. The goal is not to have a perfectly silent mind. The goal is to stop believing everything the mind produces. A thought can arise because of tiredness. A thought can arise because of fear. A thought can arise because of old pain. A thought can arise simply because the mind is restless. None of this means you are a bad person. It means you are human. The practice is not judgment. The practice is freedom. When the first thought comes, you can gently say, this is a thought, not a command. That one sentence can save you from many reactions. This is a thought, not a command. It reminds you that you have space. It reminds you that you have choice. It reminds you that your mind can speak without controlling your hands, your mouth, or your decisions. Over time, this becomes easier. At first, you may only notice the first thought after you have already reacted. That is still progress. Awareness after the reaction is better than no awareness at all. You begin by seeing what happened. You reflect without attacking yourself. You say, there was the thought. I believed it. Then I reacted. The next time, you may notice it a little earlier, then earlier again. Eventually, you begin to catch the thought while it is still fresh, before it becomes speech, before it becomes action. This is how patience is trained, not through one dramatic moment, but through many small moments of seeing. There is also a deep kindness in this practice. When you stop clinging to the first thought, you become less harsh with yourself and others. You realize that people say and do many things from their own first thoughts. They too are often reacting from habit. They too are caught in mental storms they do not fully understand. This does not mean you allow people to harm you. It means you stop adding unnecessary hatred to the moment. You can protect your peace without poisoning your heart. You can set boundaries without becoming bitter. You can speak truth without letting anger write the whole sentence. Letting the first thought pass gives you access to a cleaner kind of response, a response that does not carry the full weight of your wounded pride, a response that does not create more damage than the situation itself. Many conflicts become worse because two people are not speaking from wisdom. They are speaking from their first thoughts. One person reacts, then the other reacts, and soon nobody is responding to what is actually happening. They are responding to the stories in their own minds. This is why one calm person can change the direction of a whole situation. When you let the first thought pass, you stop feeding the cycle. You do not throw more fire into the room. You give the moment a chance to breathe, and sometimes that is enough to prevent pain from multiplying. There is another reason this teaching is so powerful. The first thought often tries to protect the ego. It rushes to defend your image, your importance, your need to be right. It says, "How dare they? Who do they think they are? I should not be treated this way." Sometimes boundaries are needed, yes, but the ego often exaggerates the threat. It makes ordinary discomfort feel like an attack on your entire being. Buddhist wisdom does not ask you to become weak. It asks you to become clear. Clarity means you can tell the difference between real harm and wounded pride. Real harm may require action. Wounded pride often requires awareness. The first thought does not always know the difference. That is why you pause. That is why you breathe. That is why you let the thought pass before you decide what to do. When you practice this, you begin to notice how much energy you use to spend defending mental stories. You start to see that many reactions were not necessary. Many arguments did not need to happen. Many resentments were built from thoughts you could have allowed to pass. This realization does not make you feel foolish. It makes you free, because once you see the pattern, you are no longer trapped in it the same way. You become more careful with your attention. You learn that attention is like water. Whatever you pour it on will grow. If you pour attention on anger, anger grows. If you pour attention on fear, fear grows. If you pour attention on patience, patience grows. So when the first thought appears, the question becomes, do I want to water this? Do I want to make this thought stronger? Do I want to build my next action from this? Sometimes the answer will be no, and that no is a form of wisdom. You are not rejecting the thought with force. You are simply choosing not to feed it. This is different from suppression. Suppression means pushing the thought down and pretending it is not there. Letting it pass means seeing it clearly and allowing it to move on without attachment. Suppression creates pressure. Awareness creates release. You are not fighting the mind, you are training it. And training always requires patience. The mind has spent years reacting in certain ways. It will not become peaceful overnight. But every time you let the first thought pass, you weaken the old habit and strengthen a new one. You teach the mind that not every irritation needs a story. Not every emotion needs a reaction. Not every thought needs a voice. There is power in silence when silence is chosen with awareness. There is power in waiting when waiting protects your peace. There is power in not turning every thought into truth. This practice also helps you become more honest, because when you pause and let the first thought pass, you often discover what is underneath it. The first thought may be anger, but beneath it may be hurt. The first thought may be blame, but beneath it may be fear. The first thought may be judgment, but beneath it may be insecurity. If you react to the first thought, you never reach the deeper truth. You stay on the surface. But if you let it pass, the deeper truth can reveal itself. And that deeper truth is where healing begins. For example, someone ignores your message. The first thought may say, "They do not care about me." If you believe it, you may become cold, angry, or resentful. But if you let it pass, you may see something deeper. Maybe you are afraid of being forgotten. Maybe an old wound has been touched. Maybe the situation is not about the other person as much as it is about something inside you asking for attention. This kind of seeing is not comfortable, but it is freeing. Because now you are not just reacting to life, you are learning from it. Every first thought becomes a doorway into self-understanding. You begin to know your own mind with more compassion. You notice its habits, you notice its fears, you notice its protective patterns, and instead of being controlled by them, you begin to guide them gently. This is why the Buddhist path is not about becoming emotionless. It is about becoming deeply awake. Awake to what arises, awake to what passes, awake to what is true beneath the noise. When you let the first thought pass, you give truth a chance to appear. And often, truth is quieter than the first thought. The first thought shouts, wisdom whispers. That is why you need stillness to hear it. Life will continue to test your patience in many ways. Someone will speak without thinking. Plans will fail. People will disappoint you. Your body will get tired. Your mind will want things to move faster. These tests will come because this is part of being human. But each test gives you a chance to practice. Not to become perfect, to become aware. You will not catch every first thought. Sometimes you will still react. Sometimes the old habit will move faster than your awareness. But even then, you can return. You can reflect. You can learn. You can begin again. Buddhist practice is not about never falling. It is about waking up sooner each time. Sooner after the reaction, sooner during the reaction, sooner before the reaction. Until one day you feel the first thought arise, and instead of obeying it, you smile gently inside. There it is, the old pattern, the old story, the old fire. And this time you do not pick it up. This time you let it pass. That moment may look small from the outside. Nobody may notice it. There may be no applause, no reward, no dramatic sign that you have changed. But inside, something sacred has happened. You have chosen freedom over habit. You have chosen awareness over impulse. You have chosen peace over the need to react. And this is how the mind becomes calm. Not because life stops testing you, but because you stop turning every test into a battle. The first thought may still come. Let it come. The emotion may still rise. Let it rise. The story may try to begin. Let it dissolve before you write the next line. This is the art. This is the training. This is the quiet strength of the Buddhist path. And as you continue, you begin to realize that patience is not just something you practice with people or problems. It is something you practice with your own mind. You learn to sit beside your thoughts without becoming frightened by them. You learn to let them move without chasing them. You learn to trust the space beneath them, because beneath every passing thought there is awareness. Beneath every wave, there is still water. Beneath every reaction, there is the possibility of peace. And once you begin to live from that place, the world may still be noisy, but you are not so easily carried away by the noise. You become steady in a way that does not need to announce itself. You become patient in a way that is not forced. You become calm, not because your mind is empty, but because you no longer believe every thought that enters it. And from here, another deeper lesson begins to open, because once you learn to let the first thought pass, you are ready to understand something most people confuse their entire lives. Patience is not weakness. It is not surrender. It is not letting life defeat you. It is a strength so quiet that only the truly aware can recognize it. And now something deeper begins to reveal itself. You have started to see your thoughts more clearly. You are no longer pulled so quickly by the first impulse. You are learning to step back, to observe, to let things pass without immediately turning them into action. But there is still a belief hiding quietly in the background, a belief that weakens your progress without you even noticing it. A belief that says, if I do not react, I am weak. If I stay calm, I am being taken advantage of. If I do not fight back, I am losing. This belief has been planted in many minds for a long time. It is repeated in conversations, in culture, in the way people measure power. Loudness is mistaken for strength. Aggression is mistaken for confidence. Immediate reaction is mistaken for control. And so, patience begins to look like something small, something passive, something that belongs to people who cannot stand up for themselves. But this is where everything turns upside down, because patience, real patience, is not weakness. It is one of the strongest forms of inner power a human being can develop. There is a quiet difference between reacting and responding. Reacting happens fast. It does not ask for permission. It does not wait for clarity. It is driven by emotion, by habit, by the need to protect the ego. Responding, on the other hand, requires awareness. It requires space. It requires the ability to remain steady, even when everything inside you wants to move quickly. And that steadiness is not easy. It takes strength to feel anger rise and not let it control your words. It takes strength to be misunderstood and not rush to defend yourself immediately. It takes strength to face unfairness and still choose clarity over chaos. Anyone can lose control. Anyone can raise their voice. Anyone can react when they feel pushed. But very few people can stay grounded when pressure builds. That is where true strength lives. Patience is not about doing nothing. It is about choosing how you act instead of being forced into action by your emotions. It is about holding your center when everything around you is trying to pull you away from it. There is something powerful about a person who does not rush. A person who listens fully before speaking. A person who can sit with discomfort without needing to escape it immediately. That kind of presence is not passive, it is stable, and stability is strength. When you develop patience, you begin to notice that you are no longer controlled by every situation. Before, a small inconvenience could change your mood. A delay could irritate you. A comment could disturb you for hours. But now, there is space. The situation happens, but it does not take over your entire inner world. This is what inner strength feels like. It is not loud. It does not need to prove itself. It simply exists as a quiet confidence that you can handle what comes without falling apart. Many people confuse strength with dominance. They believe that being strong means always winning, always being right, always having the last word. But this kind of strength is fragile. It depends on external validation. It depends on controlling others. And the moment that control is lost, the sense of strength disappears. Inner strength is different. It does not depend on others behaving a certain way. It does not depend on outcomes going in your favor. It comes from knowing that no matter what happens, you can remain steady. Patience is one of the clearest signs of this kind of strength. When you are patient, you are not ignoring reality. You are not pretending things are perfect. You are simply refusing to let your emotions make decisions for you before your awareness has a chance to speak. There is a discipline in this. Not a harsh discipline, but a steady one. A discipline that says, I will not rush into reaction. I will stay here. I will observe. I will choose carefully. This discipline builds over time. Each moment of patience strengthens it. Each moment where you choose calm instead of impulse adds another layer to your inner stability. And slowly, you begin to trust yourself more. You trust that you can face difficult conversations without losing control. You trust that you can handle delays without frustration taking over. You trust that you can stand in uncomfortable situations without needing to escape immediately. This trust changes how you move through life. You become less reactive, but more effective. This is something many people do not understand at first. They think that reacting quickly makes them strong, but often it leads to mistakes. Words are said that cannot be taken back. Decisions are made without clarity. Conflicts grow instead of resolving. Patience allows you to see clearly before acting, and clarity leads to better outcomes. You begin to notice that when you take a moment before responding, your words are more precise, your actions are more thoughtful, your presence is more grounded. You are no longer acting from pressure, you are acting from awareness. This is not weakness, this is mastery. There is also a deep resilience that comes from patience. Life will not always move at the speed you want. People will not always behave the way you expect. Situations will not always unfold according to your plans. Without patience, these moments feel unbearable. They create tension, frustration, resistance. But with patience, something shifts. You begin to accept that not everything needs to be forced. You begin to see that time has its own rhythm. You begin to understand that some things require waiting, not because you are powerless, but because that is how growth happens. Think about nature. A seed does not become a tree overnight. It grows slowly, quietly, without rushing. If you try to force it, you destroy it. Growth requires time, and patience allows that time to unfold without resistance. Your life is not different. Some changes take time. Some answers take time. Some healing takes time. Patience allows you to move through these processes without adding unnecessary suffering. It is not about doing nothing. It is about trusting the process enough to not interfere with it in a harmful way. This trust is another form of strength. It is easy to feel strong when things are going well. It is easy to feel confident when life is smooth. But true strength shows itself when things are uncertain, when results are delayed, when challenges appear. Patience allows you to remain steady in those moments. You do not collapse under pressure. You do not rush into panic. You stay present. You stay aware. You continue moving forward without losing your balance. There is also something important about how patience affects your relationships. When you are impatient, you tend to interrupt, to assume, to react quickly. This creates tension. It creates misunderstanding. It pushes people away. But when you are patient, you listen more fully. You give others space to express themselves. You respond with care instead of reacting with emotion. This changes the quality of your interactions. People feel heard around you. People feel safe around you because they sense that you are not going to explode at the first sign of discomfort. This kind of presence is rare, and it is powerful. Patience does not mean you accept everything. It does not mean you allow people to treat you poorly. It means you choose the right moment and the right way to respond. There is a difference between reacting immediately and responding wisely. Patience gives you that difference. It allows you to stand your ground without losing your calm. It allows you to express yourself without being controlled by emotion. It allows you to set boundaries without creating unnecessary conflict. This is not weakness. This is clarity in action. There is also a deep sense of freedom that comes with this understanding. When you stop seeing patience as weakness, you no longer feel the need to prove yourself through reaction. You no longer feel pressured to respond immediately to everything. You give yourself permission to take your time. This changes your entire experience of life. You move with intention instead of urgency. You act with awareness instead of impulse. You speak with clarity instead of reaction. And in doing so, you create a life that feels more stable, more peaceful, more aligned with who you truly are. The world may still be fast, people may still be reactive, situations may still be challenging, but you are no longer moving at the same pace as the chaos around you. You have found a different rhythm, a rhythm that is not rushed, a rhythm that is not forced, a rhythm that allows you to stay calm even when life tests your patience. This is where the real strength of patience reveals itself, not as something you use occasionally, but as something that becomes part of your nature. You begin to embody it, not perfectly, but consistently. And as this continues, you start to notice something else. The moments that used to irritate you begin to feel different. They no longer pull you in the same way. They no longer create the same reaction. Instead, they become opportunities. Opportunities to practice. Opportunities to strengthen your awareness. Opportunities to deepen your calm. This shift is subtle, but it changes everything. Because now, instead of seeing life's challenges as obstacles, you begin to see them as training. Training for patience. Training for clarity. Training for inner strength. And this perspective opens the door to the next layer of understanding, because once you see patience as strength, you begin to recognize that even irritation itself has a purpose. It is not just something to avoid. It is something that can guide you if you know how to listen. And this is where something surprising begins to unfold. What once felt like an obstacle slowly reveals itself as a signal. What once disturbed your peace begins to point you back to it, because now that you see patience as strength, you are ready to look at irritation in a completely different way. There is a quiet pattern most people never notice. Irritation shows up again and again in small moments. A slow line, a delayed response, a careless word, a sudden change in plans. These moments seem ordinary, almost unimportant, yet they carry a strong emotional charge. They pull your attention. They tighten your body. They create a reaction before you have time to think. Most people treat irritation as something to remove as quickly as possible. They distract themselves, complain about it, or blame the situation. But Buddhist practice offers a different perspective. It suggests that irritation is not just a problem, it is a bell. A bell that rings to wake you up. When a bell rings in a quiet place, it brings your attention to the present. It interrupts whatever you were doing. It calls you back. In the same way, irritation interrupts your automatic thinking. It breaks the flow of unconscious living. It creates a moment where awareness can enter. The question is not whether irritation will arise. It will. The real question is what you do when it appears. If you react immediately, the moment is lost. The bell rings, but you ignore it. You fall back into habit. The irritation grows into frustration, then into anger, and then into words or actions that you may later regret. But if you pause and recognize the irritation as a signal, something changes. You hear the bell. You become aware. In that moment, instead of saying, "This should not be happening," you begin to say, "Something is happening inside me right now." This shift is small, but it is powerful. It moves your focus from the outside to the inside. Instead of trying to control the situation, you begin to understand your own reaction. Irritation is often not about the situation itself. It is about your expectation of how things should be. You expect things to move faster. You expect people to behave in certain ways. You expect outcomes to match your plans. When reality does not meet these expectations, irritation appears. It is like a gap between what is and what you think should be. That gap creates tension. When you see irritation as a bell, you begin to notice this gap more clearly. You begin to ask yourself, what am I expecting right now? And often the answer reveals something deeper. You may be expecting control. You may be expecting certainty. You may be expecting comfort. But life does not always offer these things, and when you hold tightly to them, irritation becomes stronger. The bell is not just telling you that something is wrong outside. It is showing you where you are holding too tightly inside. This understanding brings a different kind of calm. Not a forced calm, but a calm that comes from seeing clearly. You begin to loosen your grip on expectations. You begin to allow life to unfold without demanding that it follows your exact plan. This does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop resisting every small inconvenience, and when resistance decreases, irritation loses its intensity. There is also something important about how quickly irritation arises. It does not wait for permission. It does not announce itself politely. It appears suddenly, often before you are fully aware of it. This is why the bell is so valuable. It gives you a chance to notice the moment early. When irritation appears, it is like a light turning on in a dark room. You suddenly see what is happening inside you. The body may feel tight. The mind may begin to race. There may be a subtle urge to react, to fix, to push something away. Instead of following that urge, you pause, you breathe, you listen. This is the practice. You are not trying to get rid of the irritation immediately. You are allowing it to be there without feeding it. You are staying present with the sensation instead of turning it into a story. This requires patience, but not the kind that feels forced. It is a gentle patience, a willingness to stay with the moment without rushing to change it. Over time, this practice changes your relationship with discomfort. Instead of seeing it as something negative, you begin to see it as something informative. Each moment of irritation becomes a teacher. It shows you where your mind is still reactive. It shows you where your expectations are strong. It shows you where your patience needs to grow. And because you are no longer avoiding these moments, you begin to learn from them. This learning is not intellectual. It is experiential. You feel it in your body. You see it in your reactions. You notice the difference between reacting and observing. This difference becomes clearer with practice. At first, you may still react often. The irritation comes, and before you remember the bell, you have already spoken or acted. But afterward, you reflect. You see what happened. You recognize the pattern. This reflection is part of the process. Then, slowly, you begin to catch the irritation earlier. You notice the tension as it begins. You feel the urge to react before it takes over. And in that moment, you remember. The bell is ringing. You pause. You breathe. You stay. This is how awareness grows, not through perfection, but through repeated moments of noticing. There is also a deeper layer to this practice. Irritation often reveals hidden attachments. It shows you what you are clinging to without realizing it. You may be clinging to being right. You may be clinging to being respected. You may be clinging to things going your way. These attachments are not always obvious. They hide beneath the surface. But irritation brings them to light. It shows you where you are holding on. And once you see this, you have a choice. You can continue holding on and suffer, or you can begin to let go, little by little. Letting go does not mean you stop caring about your life. It means you stop demanding that everything happens exactly as you want it to. It means you allow space for things to be different. This space creates freedom. Without it, every small disturbance feels like a threat. With it, disturbances become manageable. They come and go without shaking your entire state of mind. There is also something else that begins to change: your sensitivity. At first, you may think that becoming more aware of irritation makes you more sensitive. You notice things more. You feel things more. But over time, the opposite happens. You become less easily disturbed because you are no longer feeding every irritation with attention and reaction. You are letting it pass. You are seeing it for what it is: a temporary signal, a moment of discomfort, not a permanent problem. This reduces the overall noise in your mind. There are fewer stories, fewer complaints, fewer unnecessary reactions, and in that quiet, your awareness becomes stronger. You begin to experience life more directly, without the constant filter of irritation. This also affects how you relate to others. When you see irritation as a bell, you stop blaming people for how you feel. You recognize that your reaction is happening inside you. It is not entirely caused by the other person. This does not mean others have no responsibility. It means you take ownership of your inner state. This ownership gives you power. You are no longer at the mercy of other people's actions. You are not dependent on everything being perfect for you to feel calm. You carry your calm with you. And this calm is not fragile. It is grounded in awareness. When someone behaves in a way that used to irritate you, you notice the reaction, but you do not immediately follow it. You give yourself space. You listen. You respond with clarity instead of irritation. This changes the dynamic of your interactions. Conflicts become less intense. Conversations become more open. You are able to understand others more clearly because you are not reacting from a place of tension. This is another form of strength, a quiet strength that does not need to control others, a strength that comes from understanding yourself. There is also a sense of gratitude that begins to develop. This may sound unusual at first, but as you continue this practice, you start to appreciate the moments that used to frustrate you. Not because they are pleasant, but because they are useful. They show you where you still need to grow. They give you opportunities to practice awareness. They help you deepen your patience. Without these moments, it would be easy to believe that you are calm. But real calm is tested in difficult situations. It is revealed when things do not go your way. Irritation becomes a training ground, a place where you refine your awareness, a place where you strengthen your ability to stay present. And as you continue, you begin to see that these small moments are not separate from your larger life. They are part of it. The way you handle a small irritation shapes the way you handle bigger challenges. If you react strongly to small things, larger situations will feel overwhelming. But if you remain steady in small moments, you build the capacity to remain steady in larger ones. This is how patience grows, not in big, dramatic moments, but in the quiet, ordinary moments of daily life. A delayed response, a long line, a misunderstood word. Each one becomes a chance to practice, and each practice strengthens your awareness. Over time, something shifts in a very natural way. You stop seeing irritation as an enemy. You stop trying to avoid it at all costs. You begin to welcome it as a signal, a reminder, a bell. And every time it rings, you return to yourself. You return to your breath. You return to the present moment. This return becomes easier, faster, more natural, and eventually, it becomes part of who you are. You are no longer someone who is easily pulled into reaction. You are someone who notices, pauses, and responds with awareness. This is not something you force. It is something you grow. And as it grows, your mind becomes quieter. Your body becomes more relaxed. Your presence becomes more steady. Life may still bring challenges, but you meet them differently. You meet them with awareness. And from this place, a deeper understanding begins to emerge. Because once you see irritation as a bell, you begin to notice that the people who trigger you the most are not just random obstacles. They are part of your path. They are part of your training. And if you look closely, they are teaching you something you cannot learn any other way. And now something even more uncomfortable begins to reveal itself. You have started to see irritation differently. You no longer treat it as an enemy. You see it as a signal, a quiet bell calling you back to awareness. But if you listen carefully, you will notice something else. That bell does not ring on its own. It rings through people. Through the ones who test you the most. Through the ones who speak without care, act without awareness, or behave in ways that seem to push directly against your patience. And this is where the mind usually closes. It says, they are the problem. It says, if they would just change, I would be peaceful. It says, I should not have to deal with this. But what if that is not the full truth? There is a deeper layer here, a layer that most people avoid because it asks for honesty, not about others, but about yourself. Difficult people do not just appear in your life by accident. They appear as reflections, as triggers, as catalysts for growth. This does not mean you choose how others behave. It means their behavior reveals something within you that is ready to be seen. When someone irritates you deeply, it is rarely just about what they are doing. It is about how their actions interact with your expectations, your beliefs, your emotional patterns. One person may find them unbearable, while another barely reacts. The difference is not only in the person, it is in the one who is observing. This is where the teaching begins. A difficult person becomes a hidden teacher when you stop asking, why are they like this? And begin asking, why does this affect me so strongly? This question is not about blame, it is about awareness. When you start to look in this direction, you begin to notice patterns. Certain behaviors trigger you more than others. Certain tones of voice, certain attitudes, certain actions create stronger reactions. These patterns are not random. They are connected to something deeper inside you. Maybe you react strongly to disrespect because you carry a fear of being overlooked. Maybe you react to control because you value independence deeply. Maybe you react to criticism because you hold yourself to very high standards. The difficult person is not creating these reactions from nothing. They are touching something that already exists within you. And once you see this, your perspective begins to shift. Instead of seeing them only as a problem, you begin to see them as a mirror. Not a perfect mirror, not always a pleasant one, but a mirror that shows you where your work is. This does not mean you excuse harmful behavior. It does not mean you accept everything without boundaries. It means you recognize that your reaction contains information about yourself. And this information is valuable because it shows you where your patience is still fragile. It shows you where your expectations are still strong. It shows you where your sense of self is still easily disturbed. Most people spend their lives trying to avoid difficult people. They try to control their environment, to surround themselves only with comfort, to remove anything that challenges them. But life does not work that way. No matter how much you try to control it, there will always be people who test you, and this is not a mistake. It is part of the path. Each difficult person gives you a chance to practice something you cannot learn in comfort. They give you the opportunity to apply your awareness in real situations. They bring out reactions that would otherwise remain hidden. Without them, it is easy to believe that you are patient. It is easy to feel calm when everything is going your way. But true patience is revealed when things are not easy. When someone interrupts you, when someone misunderstands you, when someone behaves in a way that feels unfair. These moments are where the practice becomes real and the difficult person becomes the teacher. At first, this idea may feel uncomfortable. The mind may resist it. It may say, "Why should I learn from someone who is wrong?" But this is not about them being right. It is about you becoming aware. You are not learning from their behavior. You are learning from your reaction to their behavior. This distinction is important. You do not need to agree with someone to learn from them. You do not need to like someone to grow because of them. You only need to be willing to observe yourself honestly. When you begin to do this, something shifts inside you. The emotional charge begins to decrease, not because the person has changed, but because your relationship with the situation has changed. You are no longer seeing them only as a source of irritation. You are seeing them as part of your training. This does not make the situation pleasant. It makes it meaningful. And meaning reduces suffering. When something feels meaningless, it creates frustration. When something has meaning, it becomes easier to accept, even if it is not comfortable. This is the quiet power of this teaching. It transforms your perspective. It turns obstacles into opportunities. It turns frustration into awareness. It turns conflict into growth. There is also a deeper level to this understanding. Difficult people often behave the way they do because they are struggling themselves. Their actions come from their own patterns, their own fears, their own unresolved experiences. They may not be aware of it. They may not intend harm, but they are acting from a place that is not fully conscious. When you see this clearly, something softens, not in a way that makes you weak, but in a way that creates understanding. You begin to see that their behavior is not just about you, it is about them. Their reactions are shaped by their past. Their words are influenced by their state of mind. Their actions are driven by their own inner conditions. This does not justify harmful behavior, but it removes the illusion that everything is personal. And when things feel less personal, your reaction becomes less intense. You create space, space to observe, space to respond wisely, space to remain calm. This is where compassion begins to appear. Not forced compassion, not artificial kindness, but a natural understanding that people act from their level of awareness. Some are more aware, some are less. And this awareness influences how they treat others. When you understand this, you stop expecting everyone to behave perfectly. You stop being surprised when people act from their limitations. You adjust your expectations, and this adjustment reduces irritation, because much of irritation comes from expecting people to be different from who they are. When you see them clearly, without unrealistic expectations, your response becomes more balanced. You may still choose to distance yourself from certain people. You may still set boundaries, but you do so without carrying unnecessary anger. You act from clarity, not from reaction. This is a significant shift, because now your peace is not dependent on others changing. It comes from your own awareness. There is also something important about how this teaching affects your sense of control. When you believe that your peace depends on others behaving a certain way, you give them power over your state of mind. But when you see difficult people as part of your practice, you take that power back. You realize that your calm is something you can maintain, regardless of external behavior. This does not mean you become passive. It means you become independent. Your inner state is no longer controlled by every interaction. You are not easily pulled into reaction. You remain steady, and this steadiness is a form of freedom. It allows you to move through life without being constantly disturbed. It allows you to interact with others without losing yourself. It allows you to stay grounded, even in challenging situations. Over time, you may even notice something surprising. The people who used to irritate you the most begin to lose their effect, not because they have changed, but because you have. Their words do not trigger the same reaction. Their behavior does not create the same tension. You see them, you understand them, but you are no longer pulled into their energy. This is not indifference, it is clarity. You are aware of what is happening, but you are not controlled by it. This is what it means to become untouchable in a calm way. Not by building walls, but by building awareness. There is also a deeper gratitude that can arise from this practice. You begin to appreciate the role these people have played in your growth, not because their behavior was pleasant, but because it helped you see yourself more clearly. It helped you develop patience. It helped you strengthen your awareness. It helped you understand your own mind. Without these challenges, your growth would be slower. Your understanding would be more limited. Your patience would be less tested. This does not mean you seek out difficult people. It means you recognize their role when they appear. You use the situation instead of being used by it. You learn instead of reacting. You grow instead of resisting. This is the essence of the teaching. Life will continue to bring people who challenge you. That will not stop. But your relationship with these moments can change completely. You can move from resistance to awareness, from frustration to understanding, from reaction to clarity. And as this continues, you begin to see that patience is not just about controlling your response. It is about transforming your perception. When your perception changes, your experience changes. And when your experience changes, your life begins to feel different, calmer, more stable, more clear. This is not something that happens all at once. It develops gradually, through repeated moments of awareness, through honest observation, through the willingness to see beyond your first reaction. And as you continue, another layer begins to open. Because once you understand that difficult people are not just obstacles, but teachers, you are ready to see something even deeper. You are ready to understand that not every action directed at you is truly about you. And this realization will change how you experience offense itself. And as you begin to see difficult people differently, something else starts to loosen inside you. The reaction is not as sharp, the judgment is not as immediate, but there is still one place where the mind holds tightly, the feeling of being personally offended. A word lands the wrong way. A tone feels disrespectful. An action feels directed at you. And instantly, something inside says, "This is about me." That feeling creates a wave, and that wave often leads to suffering. But there is an old teaching that quietly dissolves this entire pattern once you truly understand it. A boat drifts down a river, another boat crashes into it. The person inside becomes angry, ready to shout, ready to blame. But when they look closely, they see that the other boat is empty. In that moment, the anger disappears. There is no one to blame, there is no one to attack, there is only an event that happened. This simple image holds a powerful truth. Much of what you take personally is not actually personal. It feels personal because your mind creates a story around it. It assumes intention. It assumes meaning. It assumes that someone is acting against you. But many times the other boat is empty. People speak from their own stress, their own fears, their own confusion. They act without awareness. They react from habits they do not even recognize. And when their actions collide with your life, your mind quickly fills in the meaning. They meant to hurt me. They are disrespecting me. They are targeting me. But what if that is not true? What if their behavior is simply the result of their own inner state, not a deliberate attack on you? This does not mean their actions are acceptable. It does not mean you allow everything without boundaries. It means you begin to question the assumption that everything is about you. This shift is subtle, but it is powerful. When you stop taking everything personally, you remove a large part of the emotional weight from your experiences. You still see what is happening, you still respond when necessary, but you do not carry the extra burden of personal offense. The mind often adds this burden automatically. It turns neutral events into personal ones. It creates narratives that increase emotional intensity. And once those narratives are formed, they are hard to let go. The empty boat teaching interrupts this process. It asks you to pause and consider another possibility. Maybe there is no intention behind the action. Maybe the person is not aware of how they sound. Maybe they are dealing with something you cannot see. Maybe their behavior has nothing to do with your worth. When you hold this perspective, the situation changes. The emotional charge decreases. The reaction softens. You are no longer fighting against a personal attack. You are responding to a moment with clarity. There is also something important about how quickly the mind creates meaning. It does not wait for full information. It fills in the gaps instantly. It assumes, interprets, and reacts. This is why the practice of pausing is so important. It gives you time to see the difference between what actually happened and the story you are telling yourself about it. Someone may speak in a short tone. The fact is, the tone was short. The story is that they are being disrespectful. The fact is simple. The story adds layers. When you begin to separate fact from story, you see how much of your reaction comes from interpretation rather than reality. The empty boat teaching helps you return to the fact. The event happened. The rest is your mind trying to make sense of it. And often, the mind chooses a meaning that creates more suffering. When you see this clearly, you begin to loosen your grip on these interpretations. You become less certain about your assumptions. You allow space for other possibilities. This space creates calm. It reduces the urgency to react. It allows you to respond more thoughtfully. There is also a deeper freedom in not taking things personally. When everything feels personal, you are constantly on guard. You feel the need to defend yourself, to prove yourself, to correct others. This creates tension. It drains your energy. But when you begin to see that many things are not about you, that tension decreases. You do not need to respond to every comment. You do not need to correct every misunderstanding. You do not need to carry every interaction as a reflection of your worth. You become lighter. You move through life with less resistance. This does not mean you become indifferent. It means you become selective. You choose what truly matters. You respond to what requires attention, and you let go of what does not. This selectiveness is a form of wisdom. It protects your energy. It keeps your mind clear. It allows you to stay focused on what is important. There is also a connection between this teaching and humility. When you stop assuming that everything is about you, you begin to see yourself as part of a larger flow of life. People act, events happen, situations unfold. Not everything revolves around you. This perspective reduces ego. It softens the need to be the center of every interaction. And in that softness, there is peace. You no longer feel the need to defend your image constantly. You are more comfortable being present without needing to control how others see you. This is a quiet form of strength. It allows you to remain steady even when others are not. It allows you to stay calm even when situations are unclear. It allows you to respond without being pulled into unnecessary conflict. The empty boat teaching also changes how you deal with past experiences. Many people carry old offenses for years. They replay conversations, revisit moments, and hold on to feelings of being wronged. These memories often feel personal. But when you apply this teaching, you begin to see them differently. You begin to consider that the other person may not have been acting with full awareness. You begin to see that their actions may have come from their own struggles. You begin to loosen the story that it was entirely about you. This does not erase what happened, but it changes how you hold it. It reduces the emotional weight. It allows you to release some of the tension, and in doing so, you create space for healing. There is also something important about how this teaching affects your future interactions. When you are not constantly expecting personal offense, you approach situations with a more open mind. You listen more carefully. You observe more clearly. You are less defensive. This changes the quality of your communication. You are able to understand others more deeply. You are able to respond without reacting. You are able to remain calm. Even when the situation is challenging, this calm is not forced. It comes from a deeper understanding, an understanding that not everything is directed at you, an understanding that people act from their own conditions, an understanding that your peace does not depend on controlling every interaction. This understanding grows with practice. At first, it may feel difficult to apply. The mind will still want to take things personally. It will still create stories. It will still react quickly. But each time you remember the empty boat, you create a small shift. You pause. You question your assumption. You allow space. And in that space, something changes. The reaction softens. The emotion settles. The situation becomes clearer. Over time, this practice becomes more natural. You begin to recognize when you are taking something personally. You begin to notice the story forming, and you begin to let it go more easily. This is how patience deepens, not by forcing yourself to stay calm, but by changing how you see what is happening. When your perception changes, your reaction changes, and when your reaction changes, your experience of life changes. You begin to move through situations with less tension. You begin to feel less affected by small disturbances. You begin to remain steady in moments that used to trigger you. This steadiness is not something you pretend. It is something you build through understanding. The empty boat teaching is not about ignoring reality. It is about seeing reality more clearly, without unnecessary interpretation, without automatic assumptions, without adding layers of personal meaning. This clarity allows you to respond wisely. It allows you to maintain your peace. It allows you to stay grounded even when life tests your patience. And as this clarity continues to grow, you begin to notice something else. Even when you understand that not everything is personal, your body still reacts. Your heart still races. Your breath still changes. Your emotions still rise. This is natural. The body responds before the mind fully processes the situation. And this brings you to the next layer of practice, a practice that helps you return to calm, not just in your thoughts, but in your body. A practice that begins with something simple but powerful, your breath. And now something even more subtle begins to show itself. You have started to see that not everything is personal. You have begun to loosen the stories your mind creates. But even with that understanding, there is still a moment when your body reacts before your clarity arrives. The chest tightens, the breath becomes shallow, the heart moves faster. And in that moment, it feels real, it feels urgent, it feels like something must be done immediately. This is where many people get pulled back into reaction, not because they do not understand, but because they believe their emotions too quickly. There is a quiet truth here that changes everything once you see it clearly. Emotions are powerful, but they are not always accurate. They feel true, but they are not always wise. And before you follow them, there is something you can return to: your breath. When something triggers you, your body responds instantly. This response is older than your thoughts. It is part of your survival system. It prepares you to act, to defend, to move quickly. But in modern life, most of the things that trigger you are not physical threats. They are words, situations, expectations. The body reacts the same way, but the context is different. This is why you need something that brings you back to the present. The breath does that. It is always there, steady, continuous, unaffected by the stories your mind creates. When you bring your attention to your breath, you interrupt the chain between emotion and reaction. You give yourself a moment to return. Breathing before believing your emotions means you do not immediately accept what you feel as truth. You acknowledge the feeling, but you do not follow it blindly. There is a difference between feeling and believing. Feeling is natural. Believing is a choice. When anger rises, you feel it. But when you believe it without pause, you act on it. When fear appears, you feel it. But when you believe it instantly, you may withdraw or react unnecessarily. The breath creates space between these two steps. It allows you to feel without immediately believing. This space is where your awareness grows stronger. When you focus on your breathing, something shifts in your body. The tension begins to loosen, the heartbeat begins to slow, the mind begins to settle. This is not something you force. It happens naturally when you bring your attention back to something steady. The breath is like an anchor in a moving ocean. The waves may still be there, but you are no longer drifting without control. You are grounded. This grounding is essential when life tests your patience. Without it, emotions can carry you away before you even realize what is happening. With it, you remain connected to yourself. There is also something important about how emotions move. They rise, they peak, they fade. But when you believe them too quickly, you extend their life. You feed them with thoughts. You give them energy. You turn a passing feeling into a lasting state. Breathing interrupts this process. It allows the emotion to complete its natural cycle without interference. You feel it, but you do not add to it. You allow it to rise and fall. And when it passes, you are still there, steady. This practice requires trust. Trust that you do not need to react immediately. Trust that waiting does not mean losing control. Trust that clarity comes when you give it space. Many people are afraid of this pause. They think if they do not react quickly, they will lose their chance to respond. But in reality, reacting too quickly often leads to outcomes that are less effective. When you breathe first, your response becomes more thoughtful, more precise, more aligned with what is actually needed. There is also a physical intelligence in the breath. It connects your mind and your body. When your breathing is shallow, your body remains in a state of tension. When your breathing becomes deeper and slower, your body begins to relax. This change affects your mind. It reduces the intensity of your thoughts. It creates a sense of calm that supports your awareness. This is why breathing is such a central practice. It is simple, but it is powerful. It does not require special conditions. It does not depend on external factors. You can return to it at any moment. In the middle of a conversation, in the middle of a delay, in the middle of a difficult situation, it is always available. When you begin to use your breath in this way, you start to notice how often you react without it. You begin to see the difference between moments when you breathe and moments when you do not. The difference is clear. With breath, there is space. Without it, there is impulse. This awareness changes your behavior over time. You begin to remember to breathe more often, not as a rule, but as a natural response. Something happens, and instead of reacting immediately, you pause, you take a breath, you return to yourself. This return becomes easier, faster, more natural, and as it becomes more natural, your reactions become less intense. You are no longer carried away as easily. You remain present. There is also a deeper layer to this practice. Breathing before believing your emotions allows you to see what is beneath the surface. Emotions often cover something deeper. Anger may cover hurt. Frustration may cover fear. Impatience may cover discomfort with uncertainty. When you react immediately, you stay on the surface. But when you breathe and allow the emotion to settle, you begin to see what is underneath. This understanding is important because it helps you respond to the real issue, not just the surface reaction. If you only respond to anger, you may miss the hurt beneath it. If you only respond to frustration, you may miss the fear behind it. Breathing gives you the time to see more clearly. It reveals the layers of your experience, and with that clarity, your response becomes more accurate, more compassionate, more effective. There is also something important about how this practice affects your relationship with control. When you believe your emotions immediately, you are controlled by them. They dictate your actions, they shape your responses, they determine your state of mind. But when you breathe first, you take control back. Not by suppressing your emotions, but by choosing how to engage with them. You are no longer reacting automatically. You are responding consciously. This shift is subtle, but it is powerful. It changes how you move through life. You become less reactive, less driven by impulse, more grounded in awareness. This grounding allows you to handle situations with greater ease. You do not feel overwhelmed as quickly. You do not feel the need to fix everything immediately. You are able to stay present even when things are uncertain. This presence is calming, not only for you, but for those around you. People can feel when you are grounded. They can sense your steadiness. It creates a different kind of interaction, one that is less tense, less reactive, more open. This is how patience begins to influence your environment, not through force, but through presence. There is also a sense of confidence that grows from this practice, not a loud confidence, but a quiet one, a confidence that you can handle your emotions without being controlled by them, a confidence that you can face difficult situations without losing your balance. This confidence comes from experience, from repeatedly returning to your breath, from repeatedly choosing awareness over reaction. Each time you do this, you strengthen your ability to remain calm. You build trust in yourself, and this trust becomes part of your foundation. Life will still bring challenges, emotions will still arise, but your relationship with them changes. You are no longer afraid of what you feel. You are no longer rushed by it. You are able to stay with it, to observe it, to let it pass. This is not about becoming emotionless. It is about becoming stable. Stable enough to feel fully without being overwhelmed. Stable enough to respond wisely without being rushed. Stable enough to remain calm when life tests your patience. And as this stability grows, something else becomes clear. You begin to see that not every moment requires action. Not every feeling requires a response. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is simply breathe and stay present. This presence allows life to unfold without unnecessary interference. It allows situations to resolve more naturally. It allows you to move with the flow instead of against it. And in this flow, there is less resistance, less tension, less struggle. This is the quiet power of the breath. It brings you back to yourself. It reminds you that you do not need to believe every emotion immediately. It gives you the space to choose, and in that space, your patience deepens, your awareness grows, your calm becomes more stable, and as you continue on this path, another understanding begins to take shape. Because even when you learn to breathe before believing your emotions, there is still something that quietly pushes you to react, a subtle need, a need that often goes unnoticed, a need to win. And once you begin to see this clearly, you will understand why so many moments of impatience are not about the situation at all, but about something much deeper within you. And as you begin to breathe before believing your emotions, another pattern slowly comes into view. It is quieter than anger, but just as powerful. It hides beneath your reactions. shaping your words, pushing your decisions, and pulling you into unnecessary tension. It is the need to win, not always in big ways, not always in obvious ways. Sometimes it appears as needing to be right. Sometimes it appears as needing to have the last word. Sometimes it shows up as correcting someone quickly, defending your point, or proving that you understand better. And most of the time it feels justified. But if you look closely, you will notice something important. Every time you feel the need to win, your patience becomes weaker. Every time you try to win a moment, your peace becomes fragile. Because winning, in this sense, is not about truth. It is about the ego protecting itself. The ego does not like to feel wrong. It does not like to feel overlooked. It does not like to feel less than others. And when it senses even a small threat, it reacts. It pushes you to speak, to defend, to correct, to prove. This reaction feels natural, but it comes with a cost. It creates tension. It creates conflict. It pulls you away from calm. The quiet power of not needing to win begins when you recognize this pattern. When you see that not every moment is a battle. When you understand that not every disagreement requires a victory. When you realize that your worth is not measured by how often you prove yourself right. This realization changes how you move through conversations. You begin to listen more, not to respond quickly, but to understand. You begin to speak more carefully, not to win, but to express clearly. You begin to pause when the urge to react appears, and in that pause, something softens. The pressure to defend yourself decreases, the need to control the outcome fades. You become less attached to the result of each interaction, and this creates space. Space for calm, space for patience, space for clarity. There is something deeply freeing about letting go of the need to win. It removes a constant source of tension. It allows you to engage with others without feeling threatened. It allows you to stay grounded, even when others disagree with you. This does not mean you abandon your values. It does not mean you stay silent when something matters. It means you choose your response wisely. You no longer speak from urgency. You speak from awareness. There is a difference between expressing truth and proving a point. Expressing truth comes from clarity. Proving a point often comes from ego. When you feel the need to win, ask yourself what is driving that need. Is it clarity, or is it the desire to be seen as right? Is it understanding, or is it the need to control the situation? These questions are not meant to judge you. They are meant to bring awareness. And awareness gives you choice. When you see that the need to win is present, you can pause, you can breathe, you can decide whether engaging in that moment is necessary. Sometimes the best response is no response. Sometimes silence carries more strength than words. This kind of silence is not avoidance. It is intentional. It comes from knowing that not every moment deserves your energy. There are situations where responding is important, where clarity is needed, where boundaries must be set. But even in those moments, the way you respond matters. When you respond without the need to win, your words become more effective. They are less charged, less reactive, more grounded. This makes them easier to hear. It reduces resistance. It creates the possibility for understanding. When you respond with the need to win, your words often carry tension. They may be technically correct, but they create distance. They trigger defensiveness. They turn a conversation into a conflict. And conflict rarely leads to clarity. It leads to more reaction, more resistance, more misunderstanding. The quiet power of not needing to win breaks this cycle. It allows you to step out of the pattern, to remain calm when others are reactive, to stay present when others are defensive, to listen when others are speaking loudly. This presence is not passive, it is active awareness. It is a steady attention that does not get pulled into unnecessary battles. Over time, this changes how others respond to you. When you do not engage in every conflict, others begin to soften. When you do not react immediately, others feel less pressure. When you listen without trying to win, others feel more understood. This does not happen in every situation. Some people will continue to react. Some situations will remain difficult, but your experience of them changes. You are no longer caught in the same cycle. You are no longer driven by the same need. You remain steady. There is also a deeper layer to this practice. The need to win is often connected to fear. Fear of being wrong. Fear of being judged. Fear of not being enough. When you let go of the need to win, you begin to face these fears directly. You begin to see that being wrong is not a threat. It is an opportunity to learn. You begin to see that being judged does not define your worth. It reflects someone else's perspective. You begin to see that you do not need to prove yourself constantly. You are already enough. This understanding reduces the pressure you place on yourself. It allows you to relax, to be present, to engage with life without constantly measuring your position. This relaxation supports patience, because impatience often comes from pressure. The pressure to fix, the pressure to prove, the pressure to control. When that pressure decreases, your reactions soften. You are able to stay with the moment without rushing. You are able to listen without interrupting. You are able to observe without judging immediately. This creates a different kind of experience, one that is less tense, less reactive, more open. There is also something important about how this practice affects your inner dialogue. When you need to win, your mind becomes busy. It searches for arguments. It prepares responses. It replays conversations. It creates tension even when nothing is happening externally. But when you let go of this need, your mind becomes quieter. You are not constantly preparing to defend yourself. You are not constantly analyzing every interaction. You are more present, more at ease. This quietness is a form of peace. It allows you to experience life more directly, without the constant noise of comparison and judgment. There is also a sense of confidence that comes from this. Not the confidence that comes from winning arguments, but the confidence that comes from being stable. Stable enough to listen, stable enough to wait, stable enough to not react immediately. This stability is noticed by others. It creates a sense of trust. People feel that you are not easily shaken, that you are not trying to dominate the conversation, that you are present. This presence is powerful. It does not need to be loud. It does not need to prove itself. It simply exists, and it influences the space around you. There is also something deeply connected between this teaching and humility. When you do not need to win, you become more open to other perspectives. You are willing to consider that you may not see everything clearly. You are willing to learn. You are willing to adjust. This openness leads to growth, because growth requires flexibility. It requires the ability to see beyond your current understanding. When you are focused on winning, this flexibility disappears. You become fixed. You hold tightly to your position. You resist change. But when you let go of the need to win, you create space for new understanding. This makes your mind more adaptable, more curious, more aware. This awareness supports patience, because you are no longer reacting from a fixed position. You are observing from an open space, and in that space, your responses become more thoughtful, more aligned with what is actually needed. There is also a practical aspect to this teaching. Not every situation requires your involvement. Not every disagreement needs your input. Not every misunderstanding needs to be corrected immediately. Learning to recognize which moments matter and which do not is part of wisdom. When you stop trying to win every moment, you conserve your energy. You focus on what is important. You engage where it truly matters. This makes your actions more effective, more intentional, more impactful. You are no longer spreading your attention across every small conflict. You are directing it where it can create real value. This direction requires patience, because it means allowing some things to pass, allowing some misunderstandings to remain unresolved for a time, allowing some conversations to end without a clear conclusion. This may feel uncomfortable at first, but over time it becomes easier. You begin to see that not every loose end needs to be tied immediately. You begin to trust that clarity will come in its own time. This trust supports calm. It reduces the urgency that drives impatience. And as this continues, something shifts in a deeper way. You begin to feel less threatened by life, less reactive, less driven by the need to control every outcome. You become more at ease with uncertainty, more comfortable with not having everything resolved immediately. This comfort is a form of freedom. It allows you to move through life with less resistance, less tension, more openness. And in that openness, your patience becomes natural, not something you force, but something that arises from your understanding. Life will continue to bring situations where you could react, where you could argue, where you could try to win, but now you have another option. You can pause, you can breathe, you can observe the urge to win, and you can choose not to follow it. This choice changes everything. It keeps your mind clear. It keeps your heart calm. It keeps your actions aligned with awareness. And as you continue to practice this, you begin to notice something even deeper. The need to win is often connected to something else. A desire to control, a belief that things must go a certain way. And when this belief is strong, impatience grows. But when you begin to see this clearly, another layer of understanding opens. A layer that shows you how your attachment to control shapes your experience of life. And once you see it, you will begin to understand why letting go of control is one of the most powerful ways to stay calm when life tests your patience. And as the need to win begins to loosen, something even deeper comes into view. You start to notice that beneath many reactions, beneath many frustrations, beneath many moments of impatience, there is a quiet force shaping your experience, a need for control, not always obvious, not always loud, but always present in subtle ways. Things should go a certain way. People should behave a certain way. Time should move according to your plans. Outcomes should match your expectations. And when life does not follow these lines, something inside you tightens. That tightening is where impatience is born. There is a silent tension that appears when reality does not match your internal picture of how things should be. It does not need a big event. It can happen in the smallest moments, a delay that was not planned, a response that does not come when expected, a conversation that does not unfold the way you imagined. These moments feel uncomfortable, not because they are harmful, but because they break your sense of control. And when control feels threatened, impatience rises. It shows up as restlessness, as irritation, as the urge to fix, to push, to move things forward faster than they are ready to move. It feels like something needs to be done immediately. But if you look closely, you will see something important. Impatience is not caused by the situation itself. It is caused by your attachment to how the situation should be. This distinction changes everything, because if impatience came only from the outside, you would be helpless. You would need the world to change in order to feel calm. But when you see that impatience is connected to your attachment, you realize that there is something you can understand and gently release. Attachment to control often feels like security. It feels like you are managing your life, keeping things in order, making sure everything goes well. But this sense of control is fragile. It depends on conditions staying predictable. It depends on people behaving consistently. It depends on outcomes aligning with your plans. Life does not promise any of this. Life moves in its own rhythm. People act from their own conditions. Events unfold in ways you cannot fully predict. When your sense of calm depends on controlling these things, you are constantly at risk of losing it. This is why impatience appears so often. It is not just a reaction to what is happening. It is a reaction to losing control over what you thought should happen. When you begin to see this clearly, you can approach impatience in a new way. Instead of trying to control the situation more, you begin to soften your attachment to controlling it. This does not mean you stop making plans. It does not mean you stop caring about outcomes. It means you hold your plans lightly. You allow space for things to be different. This space is what reduces impatience. When you are rigid, every change feels like a disruption. When you are flexible, changes become part of the flow. Flexibility is not weakness. It is a form of strength that allows you to adapt without breaking. It allows you to stay calm when things do not go as expected. It allows you to move with life instead of against it. Attachment to control often comes from a deeper place. It is connected to the desire for certainty, the desire to know what will happen, when it will happen, and how it will unfold. This desire is natural, but it can become a source of tension when it is too strong. Uncertainty is part of life. No matter how much you plan, there will always be elements you cannot control. When you resist this, impatience grows. When you accept it, patience becomes easier. Acceptance does not mean giving up. It means recognizing what is within your control and what is not. You can control your actions, you can control your effort, you can control your attention, but you cannot control everything else. You cannot control how quickly others respond. You cannot control every outcome. You cannot control the timing of everything in your life. When you try to control what is beyond your reach, you create unnecessary tension. This tension expresses itself as impatience. Letting go of control in these areas does not make you passive. It makes you clear. You focus your energy where it matters. You release what you cannot change. This creates a sense of ease. You are no longer fighting against reality. You are working with it. There is also something important about how control relates to time. Impatience often comes from wanting things to happen faster. Faster responses, faster results, faster progress. The mind creates a timeline and expects life to follow it. When life moves slower, frustration appears. But time does not always move according to your expectations. Some processes require waiting. Some results take longer than you would like. When you resist this, you suffer. When you accept it, you find calm. This acceptance does not mean you stop taking action. It means you act without forcing the timing. You do what you can, and you allow the rest to unfold. This approach reduces pressure. It allows you to stay present instead of constantly looking ahead. It allows you to experience each moment without rushing through it. There is also a connection between control and fear. The need to control often arises from the fear of things going wrong, the fear of losing something, the fear of not getting what you want. When this fear is strong, the desire to control becomes stronger. And when control is threatened, impatience increases. Seeing this clearly helps you respond differently. Instead of trying to control everything, you begin to address the fear itself. You acknowledge it, you observe it. You allow it to be present without letting it dictate your actions. This reduces the urgency. It creates space. It allows you to move forward with more calm. There is also a sense of trust that develops when you release attachment to control. Not blind trust, but a grounded trust in your ability to handle what comes. You begin to trust that even if things do not go as planned, you can respond. You can adapt. You can find your way. This trust reduces the need to control every detail. It allows you to relax, to be present, to move through life with more ease. This ease is not laziness. It is a calm engagement with life. You are still active. You are still involved. But you are not tense. You are not forcing everything to fit your expectations. You are allowing space for things to unfold. This space is where patience grows. It allows you to wait without frustration, to act without pressure, to respond without urgency. Over time, this changes your experience of life. You feel less rushed, less reactive, more steady. You begin to notice that many things resolve themselves without force. That clarity comes when you give it time. that solutions appear when you are not pushing constantly. This realization deepens your patience. It shows you that control is not always necessary, that sometimes the best action is to allow. There is also a shift in how you relate to outcomes. When you are attached to control, your happiness depends on specific results. If things go your way, you feel good. If they do not, you feel frustrated. This creates instability. Your state of mind moves with external conditions. When you release this attachment, your stability increases. You still prefer certain outcomes, but your peace does not depend entirely on them. You can accept different results without losing your calm. This acceptance is not resignation, it is clarity. You see what is happening without adding resistance. You respond accordingly. But you do not fight reality itself. This reduces suffering. It allows you to stay present even when things are not perfect. And in that presence, you find a different kind of peace. One that is not dependent on control, one that is grounded in awareness. This awareness continues to grow as you practice. You begin to notice when you are trying to control too much. You begin to feel the tension that comes with it, and you begin to let go little by little. This letting go is not dramatic. It is gentle. It happens in small moments, a delayed message, a slow line, a change in plans. Each moment becomes an opportunity to release control, to breathe, to allow, to stay present. And as you continue, something shifts in a deeper way. You begin to feel less need to force life, less need to rush, less need to control every outcome. You become more aligned with the natural flow of things. This alignment brings calm, it brings stability, it brings a sense of ease that does not depend on everything going perfectly. Life will still change, situations will still be unpredictable, people will still act in ways you do not expect. But your response changes. You are no longer trying to control everything. You are responding to what is actually happening, with awareness, with patience, with clarity. And as this clarity deepens, another layer of understanding begins to open. Because even when you release attachment to control, there are moments when life feels harsh, moments when the world seems intense, overwhelming, or difficult. In those moments, something else becomes important. The way you look at what is happening, the way you see the world itself. And once you understand this, you will discover a new way of meeting life, one that softens even the harshest experiences. And as your grip on control begins to loosen, another layer quietly comes into view. You are no longer trying to force every outcome. You are allowing space. You are learning to move with life instead of against it. But there are still moments when life feels heavy, sharp, or overwhelming. Moments when the world seems too intense, too demanding, too harsh. In those moments, something subtle happens inside you. Your body tightens, your gaze hardens, your mind becomes narrow, focused only on what is wrong. You begin to look at life through tension, and this way of looking shapes everything you feel. There is a quiet practice that can change this completely. It is simple, but it reaches deep into how you experience the world. It is the practice of soft eyes. When life feels harsh, your natural reaction is to harden. You focus more intensely. You narrow your attention. You try to control or resist what is happening. This creates a kind of inner pressure. It makes everything feel heavier than it already is. Soft eyes do the opposite. They relax your gaze. They widen your awareness. They allow you to see more than just the problem in front of you. This is not just about how you use your physical eyes. It is about how you look at life. When your eyes are soft, your mind becomes softer. When your mind becomes softer, your reactions become calmer. This is a direct connection. Think about how you look at something when you are stressed. Your focus becomes sharp and narrow. You look directly at the issue, almost trying to push through it with your attention. This kind of focus can be useful in some situations, but when it is driven by tension, it creates more stress. Soft eyes shift this pattern. Instead of narrowing, you allow your vision to expand. You become aware of the space around what is happening. You notice more details. You feel less pressure to fix everything immediately. This expansion creates a sense of ease. It reminds you that the situation is not the whole picture. There is more happening than what your mind is focusing on. This wider awareness helps you stay grounded. It prevents you from becoming completely absorbed in the problem. And when you are not absorbed, you have more space to respond calmly. There is also a deeper aspect to this practice. Soft eyes are not only about what you see, but how you see. When life feels harsh, your mind tends to judge quickly. It labels situations as bad, unfair, or unacceptable. These judgments create resistance. They make the experience more intense. Soft eyes reduce this judgment. They allow you to observe without immediately labeling. You see what is happening, but you do not rush to define it. This creates a different kind of experience, one that is less reactive, more open, more accepting. Acceptance here does not mean agreement. It means seeing clearly without adding extra tension. When you see something clearly, without judgment, your response becomes more balanced. You are not reacting to your interpretation. You are responding to the reality of the moment. This is a subtle but powerful shift. It changes how you experience difficulty. Instead of feeling attacked by life, you begin to feel present within it. You are still aware of challenges, but they do not overwhelm you in the same way. There is also a physical effect to this practice. When you soften your gaze, your body begins to relax. Your shoulders drop. Your breathing becomes more natural. Your nervous system shifts from tension to calm. This physical relaxation supports your mental state. It reduces the intensity of your emotions. It makes it easier to stay present. This is why the practice is so effective. It works on multiple levels at once. The body, the mind, and your perception all begin to shift together. Over time, this creates a new habit. Instead of tightening when things become difficult, you soften. Instead of narrowing your focus, you expand it. Instead of reacting quickly, you observe. This habit changes how you move through life. You become less reactive, less overwhelmed, more steady. There is also something important about how soft eyes affect your relationship with discomfort. When you resist discomfort, it grows. When you tighten against it, it becomes more intense. Soft eyes allow you to stay with discomfort without increasing it. You feel it, but you do not fight it. You allow it to be there, while maintaining a sense of space around it. This space reduces suffering. It allows the discomfort to pass more naturally. You are no longer adding layers of resistance. You are simply experiencing what is there. This is a key part of patience. Patience is not about removing discomfort. It is about staying present with it without being overwhelmed. Soft eyes support this. They help you remain open. They help you stay connected to the present moment. They prevent your mind from collapsing into the difficulty. There is also a connection between soft eyes and compassion. When your gaze is hard, your judgments are strong. You see others in a fixed way. You react quickly. You assume intention. But when your eyes are soft, your perspective changes. You see more clearly. You notice details you might have missed. You become more aware of the complexity of situations. This awareness creates understanding, and understanding leads to compassion. You begin to see that people are not just their actions. They are influenced by their experiences, their emotions, their circumstances. This does not excuse harmful behavior, but it changes how you respond to it. You are less likely to react with anger, more likely to respond with clarity. This clarity supports patience. It allows you to stay calm even when others are not. It allows you to engage without becoming reactive. This is a form of strength, a quiet strength that does not depend on controlling others, a strength that comes from understanding. There is also something important about how soft eyes affect your sense of time. When you are tense, time feels compressed. Everything feels urgent. You feel the need to act quickly, to fix things immediately. Soft eyes expand your sense of time. They create a feeling of openness. You no longer feel rushed. You feel like you have space to respond. This reduces impatience. It allows you to move at a natural pace, to act when necessary, but not out of pressure. This change in pace affects your entire experience. You feel less stressed, less overwhelmed, more in control of your actions. This control is not forced. It comes from being present, from being aware, from allowing space. There is also a deeper level to this practice. Soft eyes help you see beyond the surface of situations. When you are tense, you focus only on what is immediately visible. You react to the obvious. But when your awareness expands, you begin to notice patterns. You see how situations are connected. You understand the context more fully. This deeper seeing leads to wiser responses. You are not reacting to isolated moments. You are responding to the broader situation. This makes your actions more effective, more thoughtful, more aligned with what is actually needed. Over time, this way of seeing becomes natural. You no longer need to remind yourself to soften. It happens automatically. Your default response shifts from tension to openness, from reaction to observation. This shift is subtle, but it changes everything. You begin to experience life differently. Challenges still arise, difficult moments still happen. But your response is different. You remain calm, you remain aware, you remain present. This presence allows you to navigate difficulties with greater ease. You are not pushing against life, you are moving with it. This movement creates a sense of flow, a sense that you are not separate from what is happening, but part of it. This connection reduces resistance, it reduces tension, it creates a feeling of harmony, even in challenging situations. There is also something important about how this practice affects your inner dialogue. When your gaze is hard, your thoughts tend to be critical. You judge yourself, you judge others, you create pressure. But when your eyes are soft, your thoughts become gentler. You are less harsh, more understanding, more patient. This gentleness supports your overall well-being. It reduces internal conflict. It creates a sense of ease. This ease is not passive, it is active awareness. It allows you to engage with life without creating unnecessary tension. As this continues, you begin to notice that your patience is no longer something you try to maintain. It becomes part of your nature. You respond calmly without forcing it. You remain steady without effort. You are simply present, and in that presence there is peace. This peace is not dependent on external conditions. It comes from your way of seeing, your way of being, your way of relating to life. Soft eyes are a gateway to this state. They remind you to stay open, to stay aware, to stay connected to the present moment. And as you continue, another layer begins to unfold. Because even when you soften your gaze, there are still moments when emotions feel strong. Moments when the mind wants to either push them away or let them explode. And this brings you to the next understanding, a balance that sits between these two extremes. A way of being that allows you to experience emotions fully without being controlled by them. And once you see this clearly, your patience will deepen in a way that feels natural and complete. And as your way of seeing begins to soften, another truth quietly reveals itself. You are no longer reacting as quickly. You are no longer tightening against every difficult moment. But there is still a place where many people lose their balance. When strong emotions rise, the mind tends to move in one of two directions. It either pushes the feeling down, or it lets the feeling take over. Both may feel like solutions, but both create suffering in different ways. This is where a deeper path opens. There is a way to feel fully without being overwhelmed, and to remain calm without forcing yourself to be numb. There is a middle way. When emotions rise, especially in moments when life tests your patience, the instinct to control them appears almost immediately. You may try to suppress what you feel. You tell yourself to stay calm, to ignore the emotion, to push it aside. On the surface, this can look like patience, it can look like strength. But underneath, the emotion does not disappear. It stays. It builds quietly, and over time it becomes pressure. This pressure may not show itself right away. It may sit in the body as tension. It may appear later in unexpected reactions. It may come out in a different situation, stronger than before. Suppression does not remove the emotion. It only delays its expression. On the other side, there is explosion. This is when the emotion is allowed to take full control. It rises, and instead of observing it, you become it. Words come out quickly. Actions follow without pause. There is no space between feeling and reacting. In this state, the emotion expresses itself fully, but without awareness. And afterward, there is often regret, because what was expressed was not guided by clarity. It was driven by impulse. Both suppression and explosion come from the same place, a lack of awareness. One tries to avoid the emotion, the other is consumed by it. The middle way offers something different. It does not avoid, it does not overwhelm, it allows. When an emotion arises, you acknowledge it, you feel it. But you do not act from it immediately. You stay present with it. You observe it as it moves through your body. This requires a different kind of attention, not a controlling attention, not a resisting attention, but a gentle, steady awareness. You notice the sensation, you notice the movement, you notice the energy, but you do not add to it. You do not create a story around it. You do not push it away. You let it be. This is not easy at first. The mind wants to do something. It wants to fix, it wants to react, it wants to control. But the middle way asks you to stay, to remain present with what is happening, without interference. This presence changes the experience. The emotion begins to move, not because you forced it, but because you did not hold on to it. There is a natural flow to emotions. They arise, they peak, they pass. When you suppress them, you interrupt this flow. When you react from them, you extend it. When you observe them, you allow the flow to complete. This is the balance. You are not avoiding, you are not indulging, you are allowing. This allowance creates space, and in that space, awareness grows stronger. You begin to see that emotions are not as solid as they feel. They are movements, they are waves, they come and go, and you remain. This realization changes how you relate to them. You are no longer afraid of feeling. You are no longer controlled by what you feel. You become steady. There is also something important about how this practice affects your body. When you suppress emotion, the body holds tension. The muscles tighten. The breath becomes shallow. The energy becomes stuck. When you explode, the body releases energy quickly, but often in a way that creates more disturbance. The middle way allows the body to process the emotion naturally. The breath remains steady. The tension moves and releases. The body returns to balance. This balance supports your mind. It creates a sense of calm that is not forced. It allows you to remain present without strain. Over time, this becomes easier. You begin to recognize emotions earlier. You notice the first signs. You feel the subtle shifts. And instead of reacting immediately, you stay. You observe. You allow. This becomes a habit, a natural response, not something you have to remember each time, but something that happens on its own. There is also a deeper understanding that develops. You begin to see that emotions are not problems. They are signals. They are information. They show you what is happening inside you, but they are not instructions. You do not have to act on every feeling. You do not have to follow every impulse. You can feel without reacting. This is the essence of the middle way. It gives you freedom, freedom to experience life fully, without being controlled by it. There is also a connection between this practice and patience. When you suppress emotion, impatience builds beneath the surface. When you explode, impatience expresses itself outwardly. But when you stay in the middle, impatience dissolves, because you are not resisting the moment. You are not trying to change it immediately. You are allowing it to be. This allowance creates calm. It reduces urgency. It allows you to move at a natural pace. There is also something important about how this practice affects your relationships. When you suppress emotion, others may not see your reaction, but they can feel the tension. It creates distance. It creates misunderstanding. When you explode, the reaction is clear, but it often creates conflict. It damages connection. The middle way allows you to communicate more clearly. You are aware of what you feel, but you express it with calm. You do not hide it. You do not let it control you. You speak from awareness. This creates understanding. It allows others to hear you. It reduces conflict. It supports connection. There is also a sense of honesty in this approach. You are not pretending to be calm. You are not forcing yourself to be something you are not. You are simply aware of what is happening. And this awareness guides your response. This honesty builds trust with yourself and with others. You begin to trust that you can handle your emotions. You begin to trust that you can stay present. You begin to trust that you do not need to control everything. This trust reduces fear. It reduces tension. It creates stability. There is also something important about how this practice affects your sense of identity. When you suppress emotion, you may feel disconnected from yourself. When you explode, you may feel out of control. But when you stay in the middle, you feel aligned. You are aware. You are present. You are steady. This alignment creates a sense of wholeness. You are not divided. You are not conflicted. You are simply aware of what is happening. And this awareness allows you to respond wisely. Over time, this becomes your natural state. You no longer move to extremes. You no longer suppress or explode. You remain balanced. You remain present. You remain calm. This calm is not something you create. It is something that emerges when you stop interfering with your experience, when you stop trying to control or avoid, when you simply allow. There is also a deeper peace that comes from this, a peace that is not dependent on circumstances, a peace that remains even when emotions arise, because you are not fighting them, you are not controlled by them, you are simply aware. This awareness is stable. It does not change with every moment. It remains, and as you continue to practice this, another layer begins to open, because even when you learn to stay in the middle, to allow emotions without suppression or explosion, there is still something that can soften the intensity even further. A quality that transforms how you relate to yourself and others. A quality that reduces the fire of reaction at its root. And once you begin to develop it, your patience will deepen in a way that feels natural and effortless. And as you begin to stay in that middle space, not suppressing and not exploding, something else becomes possible. The intensity of your emotions is no longer controlling you, but there is still a subtle heat that can rise inside. A quiet fire that appears in moments of frustration, judgment, or hurt. It does not always show on the outside, but you can feel it within. That inner fire can burn slowly or quickly, but if left untouched, it will continue to shape your reactions. There is a way to soften it without force. There is a way to calm it without resistance, and that way is compassion. Compassion is often misunderstood. Many people think it is weakness, or that it means accepting everything without boundaries. But true compassion is neither weak nor passive. It is a clear and steady awareness that understands suffering, both in yourself and in others, without becoming overwhelmed by it. When you meet your inner fire with resistance, it grows stronger. When you judge it, it becomes heavier. But when you meet it with compassion, something begins to change. The intensity softens, the pressure decreases, the emotion begins to move instead of staying stuck. Compassion starts with yourself. When you feel anger, frustration, or impatience, the first instinct is often to push it away or criticize yourself for feeling it. You may think, "I should not feel this way," or "I need to get rid of this." But this creates another layer of tension. You are reacting not only to the situation, but also to your own reaction. Compassion interrupts this pattern. Instead of judging yourself, you acknowledge what you feel. You recognize that this moment is difficult. You allow yourself to experience it without adding harshness. This does not mean you agree with every emotion. It means you are honest about what is present. This honesty creates space, and in that space, the emotion begins to soften. There is a quiet strength in being able to sit with your own discomfort without turning against yourself. It shows that you are not afraid of your experience. It shows that you trust your ability to handle what arises. This trust reduces the intensity of the emotion. It allows you to remain steady. There is also something important about how compassion changes your perspective. When you are caught in irritation or anger, your view becomes narrow. You focus only on what is wrong. You see only the surface, but compassion widens your awareness. It allows you to see the situation more fully. It allows you to recognize that behind every action, there is a condition. Behind every harsh word, there may be stress. Behind every careless action, there may be distraction or pain. This does not excuse behavior, but it creates understanding, and understanding reduces the need to react. When you see that someone is acting from their own struggle, your response changes. You are less likely to take it personally, less likely to react with anger, more likely to remain calm. This calm is not forced, it comes from seeing clearly. There is also a connection between compassion and patience. When you are impatient, you are often focused on yourself, your needs, your expectations, your timeline. But compassion shifts your attention. It includes others. It recognizes that everyone is moving through their own experiences. This recognition creates patience. You are no longer demanding that everything happens according to your preference. You are allowing space for others to be as they are. This does not mean you tolerate harmful behavior. It means you respond with clarity instead of reaction. You can set boundaries with compassion. You can speak firmly without anger. You can protect your peace without creating conflict. This balance is powerful. It allows you to remain calm while still being effective. There is also something important about how compassion affects your inner dialogue. When you are harsh with yourself, your mind becomes tense. It creates pressure. It increases the intensity of your emotions. But when you speak to yourself with kindness, your mind becomes softer, more open, more stable. You begin to feel supported instead of attacked. This support reduces the need to react. It allows you to stay present, to observe, to respond wisely. There is also a deeper level to compassion. It is not only about understanding others, it is about recognizing the shared nature of human experience. Everyone feels frustration. Everyone experiences discomfort. Everyone struggles at times. When you see this clearly, you begin to feel connected instead of separate. This connection reduces judgment. It reduces the sense of isolation. It creates a sense of common ground. And in that common ground, there is calm. You are no longer fighting against others. You are moving with an understanding that everyone is navigating their own path. This understanding supports patience. It allows you to remain steady even when others are not. It allows you to respond with awareness instead of reaction. There is also a practical aspect to this. When you meet a difficult situation with compassion, your actions become more effective. You are not reacting blindly. You are responding with clarity. This clarity allows you to choose the best course of action, not the fastest, not the most emotional, but the most appropriate. This reduces mistakes. It reduces conflict. It creates better outcomes. Over time, this becomes a natural way of being. You do not have to remind yourself to be compassionate. It arises naturally from your understanding. You see clearly, you feel fully, but you remain steady. This steadiness is what disarms the inner fire, not by suppressing it, not by ignoring it, but by meeting it with awareness and kindness. There is also something important about how compassion relates to forgiveness. When you hold on to anger, the inner fire continues to burn. It keeps the past alive. It creates tension in the present. But when you approach the situation with compassion, forgiveness becomes possible. Not because the action was acceptable, but because holding on to it no longer serves you. Forgiveness releases the energy that was tied to the event. It allows you to move forward. It creates space for peace. This peace is not dependent on others changing. It comes from your own willingness to let go. There is also a sense of freedom in this. You are no longer controlled by past experiences. You are not carrying unnecessary weight. You are present, clear, calm. This freedom supports patience. It allows you to respond to the current moment without being influenced by past reactions. There is also something important about how compassion affects your relationship with yourself over time. As you continue this practice, you begin to treat yourself differently. You become less critical, less harsh, more understanding. This creates a stable foundation, a sense of inner support. And with that support, you are less reactive. You do not need to defend yourself constantly. You do not feel threatened as easily. You remain grounded. This grounding allows you to handle difficult situations with more ease. You are not overwhelmed. You are not pushed into reaction. You stay present. You respond with clarity. This is the quiet power of compassion. It does not remove challenges. It changes how you meet them. It softens the inner fire. It creates space for awareness. It supports patience. And as this continues, something even deeper begins to appear. Because even when you meet yourself and others with compassion, there are moments when waiting feels difficult. Moments when nothing is moving. When answers are not coming. When progress feels slow. And in those moments, another form of patience becomes important. A patience that is not filled with tension. A patience that is not burdened by resentment. A patience that allows you to wait without suffering. And once you understand this, your calm will deepen in a way that feels natural and complete. And as compassion begins to soften the fire within you, something else becomes clear. You can meet difficult moments with kindness. You can respond without harshness. But there are still times when nothing moves. Times when there is no clear answer. Times when life asks you to wait. Not for a moment, but for longer than you would like. And this is where patience is tested in a deeper way, because waiting is not the problem. The suffering often comes from how you wait. There is a kind of waiting that feels heavy. It feels tense. It carries frustration, resistance, and a quiet anger that says, this should not be taking so long. This is waiting with resentment. And then there is another kind of waiting. A waiting that feels steady. A waiting that does not fight the moment. A waiting that allows time to unfold without turning it into suffering. This is waiting with wisdom. When you are forced to wait, the mind quickly creates a story. It tells you that something is wrong. It tells you that you are being delayed, blocked, or held back. It starts to measure time, to count minutes, to compare how things should be versus how they are. This comparison creates tension. It turns a simple moment into a struggle. But if you look closely, you will see that the waiting itself is neutral. Time is passing. The moment is unfolding. The discomfort is coming from resistance. The resistance comes from wanting the moment to be different. This is where the shift begins. Instead of asking, why is this taking so long? You begin to ask, what is happening inside me while I wait? This question brings your attention inward. It shows you the patterns of impatience. It reveals the tension that builds when you try to rush what cannot be rushed. When you see this clearly, you begin to soften your resistance. You stop pushing against time. You begin to move with it. This does not mean you stop caring about outcomes. It means you stop turning waiting into suffering. There is a quiet strength in allowing things to take the time they need. It shows that you trust the process. It shows that you are not dependent on immediate results to feel at ease. This trust creates calm. It reduces urgency. It allows you to stay present instead of constantly looking ahead. There is also something important about how waiting affects your mind. When you resist waiting, your thoughts become restless. They jump forward. They imagine outcomes. They create pressure. This restlessness pulls you away from the present moment. It creates a sense of unease. But when you accept waiting, your mind settles. You return to what is happening now. You notice your breath. You notice your surroundings. You become aware of the moment instead of escaping it. This awareness transforms the experience. Waiting is no longer empty. It becomes full of presence, full of observation, full of quiet awareness. There is also a deeper layer to this. Waiting without resentment allows you to see that time is not something you control. It moves at its own pace. Some things happen quickly, some things take longer. When you try to control this, you create tension. When you accept it, you create ease. This ease is not passive. It is a calm engagement with reality. You are still involved. You are still attentive, but you are not forcing. You are allowing. This allowance supports patience. It allows you to stay grounded even when progress is slow. There is also something important about how this practice affects your emotions. When you wait with resentment, your emotions become heavier, frustration builds, irritation grows. You may not express it outwardly, but you feel it inside. This emotional weight makes the waiting feel longer than it is, but when you wait without resentment, the emotional weight decreases. You are not adding tension to the moment. You are allowing it to be. This makes the experience lighter, more manageable, more peaceful. There is also a sense of clarity that comes from this. When you are not resisting, you can see more clearly. You are not clouded by frustration. You are not distracted by impatience. You are present. This presence allows you to respond wisely when the moment requires action. You are not reacting from pressure. You are acting from awareness. This leads to better decisions, better timing, better outcomes. There is also something important about how waiting relates to growth. Many processes in life cannot be rushed. Learning, healing, building relationships, developing understanding. These things require time. When you try to rush them, you interfere with their natural development. You create stress. You create imbalance. But when you allow them to unfold, they develop more fully, more naturally. Waiting becomes part of the process, not an obstacle. This perspective changes how you experience delays. Instead of seeing them as interruptions, you begin to see them as necessary, as part of the path. This reduces frustration. It creates acceptance. It supports patience. There is also a connection between waiting and control. When you are attached to control, waiting feels uncomfortable. It feels like you are losing something, like you are not moving forward. But when you release some of that attachment, waiting becomes easier. You are not measuring your progress constantly. You are not trying to force outcomes. You are allowing things to happen in their own time. This creates a sense of freedom. You are not trapped in urgency. You are not driven by pressure. You are present. This presence brings calm. It allows you to experience each moment without rushing through it. There is also something important about how this practice affects your relationships. When you wait with resentment, it can show in your interactions. You may become short, impatient, or distant. This creates tension. It affects how others respond to you. But when you wait without resentment, your presence remains calm. You are more patient with others, more understanding, more open. This creates better communication, better connection, better outcomes. There is also a deeper level of trust that develops. When you allow yourself to wait without resistance, you begin to trust that things will unfold as they need to. Not always in the way you expect, but in a way that you can respond to. This trust reduces fear. It reduces the need to control every detail. It allows you to relax, to stay present, to remain calm. This calm is not dependent on things happening quickly. It is grounded in your ability to stay steady regardless of timing. There is also a sense of patience that grows naturally from this. Not forced patience, not patience that feels like effort, but patience that comes from understanding. You see that rushing does not help. You see that resistance creates suffering. You see that allowing creates ease. This understanding becomes part of you. It shapes how you respond to situations. It influences your actions. It guides your decisions. There is also something important about how this practice affects your sense of time. When you are impatient, time feels slow. Every moment feels stretched. Every delay feels longer. But when you are present, time feels different. It flows, it moves naturally. You are not focused on how long something takes. You are focused on what is happening now. This shift changes your experience completely. Waiting is no longer something to endure. It becomes something to experience, something to observe, something to learn from. There is also a quiet peace in this, a peace that comes from not fighting the moment, a peace that comes from allowing time to unfold, a peace that remains even when things are uncertain. This peace supports your overall well-being. It reduces stress, it reduces tension, it creates a sense of balance, and as this balance grows, you begin to notice something else. Even when you are able to wait without resentment, there are still moments when your mind reacts quickly. Moments when something happens and your first instinct is to respond immediately. This reaction often comes before your awareness has a chance to speak. And this brings you to the next layer of understanding, a layer that reveals how quickly your body reacts and how your wisdom can learn to meet it with calm instead of impulse. And as you learn to wait without resentment, another quiet truth begins to surface. You are no longer rushing time. You are no longer fighting delays. But there is still a moment when something happens and your body moves before your wisdom has time to speak. A word lands sharply, a situation shifts suddenly, a feeling rises fast. And in that instant, there is an urge to react. It feels immediate, it feels necessary, it feels like something must be done right now. But what if that urgency is not truth, but habit? There is a deeper understanding that begins to calm this urge at its root. Everything you experience is temporary. This is not just an idea, it is a reality that touches every moment of your life. Thoughts come and go. Emotions rise and fall. Situations change. People shift. Nothing remains fixed for long. But the mind often forgets this. When something unpleasant happens, it feels permanent. It feels like it will last. It feels like it needs to be corrected immediately. This is where the urge to react becomes strong. You believe the moment will stay as it is. You believe the feeling will continue. You believe the situation defines something lasting, and so you react. But when you begin to see impermanence clearly, something changes. You realize that the moment is already moving. Even as it feels intense, it is shifting. Even as the emotion feels strong, it is changing. Even as the situation feels fixed, it is evolving. This understanding creates space. Space between what you feel and what you do. Space that allows you to pause. Space that allows your awareness to guide you instead of your impulse. When you know that something will pass, the urgency to react decreases. You no longer feel the need to fix everything immediately. You allow the moment to unfold. This does not mean you ignore what is happening. It means you do not rush into action without clarity. There is a difference between responding wisely and reacting quickly. Impermanence helps you see that not every reaction is necessary. Some moments resolve on their own. Some emotions fade without interference. Some situations change without your involvement. When you recognize this, you begin to trust the process more. You begin to allow things to move. This trust reduces tension. It reduces the pressure to act. It allows you to remain calm. There is also something important about how impermanence affects your emotions. When you feel anger, it can seem overwhelming. It can feel like it defines the moment, but if you observe it carefully, you will see that it does not stay the same. It rises, it peaks, it fades. Even if it returns differently. It is not fixed. This movement is always happening. When you are caught in the emotion, you may not see it, But when you step back, when you observe, it becomes clear. The feeling is not permanent, and if it is not permanent, you do not need to react as if it is. This realization creates calm. It allows you to stay with the feeling without being controlled by it. You begin to see emotions as waves. They come, they move, they pass. You are not the wave, you are the one who observes it. This observation is powerful. It removes the illusion that the emotion will last forever. It reduces fear, it reduces urgency, it creates space for patience. There is also a deeper layer to this understanding. Impermanence does not only apply to emotions, it applies to situations. The difficult moment you are in will not stay exactly as it is. The conversation will change, the environment will shift, time will move. When you remember this, the intensity of the moment decreases. You no longer feel trapped. You no longer feel like you must act immediately to escape. You can stay present. You can observe. You can respond when it is appropriate. This ability to stay is a form of strength. It shows that you are not controlled by temporary conditions. It shows that you trust the flow of life. There is also something important about how this practice affects your thoughts. The mind often creates stories that extend beyond the present moment. It imagines the future. It replays the past. It builds narratives that make the situation feel larger than it is. Impermanence interrupts this pattern. It brings you back to what is actually happening now, not what might happen, not what happened before, but what is here. This focus reduces mental noise. It reduces the number of thoughts you follow. It allows you to stay grounded. This grounding supports calm. It allows you to see clearly. It allows you to respond without being overwhelmed. There is also a connection between impermanence and attachment. When you believe something will last, you attach to it. You hold on to it. You resist change. This resistance creates tension. But when you understand that everything changes, your attachment softens. You still care, you still engage, but you do not cling. This lack of clinging reduces suffering. It allows you to move with life instead of against it. This movement creates ease. It allows you to remain calm even when things change. There is also something important about how impermanence affects your expectations. When you expect things to stay the same, you create disappointment when they do not. But when you understand that change is natural, your expectations become more flexible. You allow for variation, you allow for uncertainty. This flexibility supports patience. It reduces frustration. It allows you to adapt. Adaptability is a key part of staying calm. It allows you to respond to what is happening instead of resisting it. Impermanence supports this adaptability. It reminds you that change is constant, that nothing is fixed, that everything is moving. This awareness creates a sense of flow. You are not stuck. You are part of a process. This process is always unfolding, and when you align with it, your experience becomes smoother. There is also a deeper sense of perspective that comes from this understanding. When you see that moments pass, you begin to see them in a larger context. A small irritation becomes less significant. A temporary discomfort becomes easier to handle. You are not overwhelmed by each moment. You see it as part of a bigger picture. This perspective reduces the intensity of your reactions. It allows you to stay balanced. It allows you to respond with clarity. There is also something important about how impermanence affects your sense of urgency. When you believe that a moment defines everything, you feel pressure to act. But when you see that the moment will pass, the pressure decreases. You do not feel rushed. You do not feel forced. You allow yourself time to breathe, time to observe, time to choose your response. This time is essential. It creates space for awareness. It allows your wisdom to guide you. It prevents impulsive actions. There is also a sense of peace that comes from accepting impermanence. Not a passive peace, but an active acceptance of how life works. You are not fighting change. You are not resisting movement. You are allowing things to be as they are. This acceptance reduces suffering. It allows you to stay calm even when things are not ideal. It allows you to remain steady even when situations shift. Over time, this becomes a natural way of being. You no longer react to every change. You no longer resist every discomfort. You remain present. You remain aware. You remain calm. This calm is not something you force. It is something that emerges from your understanding, from seeing clearly, from recognizing that everything is temporary. And as this understanding deepens, you begin to notice something else. Even when you see that moments pass, there are times when others speak or act in ways that still affect you, not because they are permanent, but because of how you hear them, because of how you interpret them. And this brings you to another layer of practice, a way of listening that goes beyond words, a way of hearing that reveals what is beneath what is being said. And once you begin to understand this, your patience will deepen even further. And as you begin to understand that every moment passes, that no feeling holds its shape for long, something else becomes clear. Even when you stay calm inside, even when you do not rush to react, there are still moments when other people's words seem to reach you deeply. A tone feels sharp, a sentence feels heavy, a message feels misunderstood. And even when you know it will pass, something inside you still moves. This is where another quiet practice begins to open. Because what you hear is not always what is truly being said. There is a layer beneath words that most people never listen to. And once you begin to hear it, your patience changes in a way that feels natural and deep. When someone speaks to you, you usually hear the surface first. The words, the tone, the way they are arranged. Your mind reacts quickly to this layer. It judges, interprets, compares. It decides whether what was said is right or wrong, fair or unfair, kind or harsh. This reaction happens so fast that you often miss what lies underneath. But words are only the outer expression of something deeper. Behind every sentence, there is a state of mind. Behind every tone, there is an emotion. Behind every reaction, there is a condition that shaped it. When you begin to listen beneath someone's words, you shift your attention from the surface to the source. Instead of asking, "What did they say?" you begin to ask, "What are they feeling?" or "What is driving this?" This simple shift changes everything, because when you listen only to words, you react to content. But when you listen beneath them, you respond to the condition behind them. And conditions are often more complex than they appear. A person may speak sharply, but the sharpness may come from stress. A person may seem distant, but the distance may come from fear. A person may sound critical, but the criticism may come from insecurity. When you hear only the surface, you react to the sharpness, the distance, the criticism. But when you hear beneath it, you begin to see the human experience behind it. This does not excuse harmful behavior, it gives you context, and context reduces the intensity of your reaction. You are no longer responding to a personal attack. You are responding to a moment shaped by many factors. This awareness creates space. It slows down your reaction. It allows your patience to remain steady. There is also something important about how listening beneath words changes your own state. When you are focused only on the surface, your mind becomes defensive. You prepare responses. You search for arguments. You hold on to your position. This creates tension. It pulls you into a reactive state. But when you shift your attention to what is beneath, your mind becomes curious. Instead of defending, you are observing. Instead of reacting, you are understanding. Curiosity softens the mind. It opens it. It allows you to stay present without being pulled into conflict. This presence is powerful. It changes how the interaction unfolds. When you listen deeply, the other person feels it. They may not understand it consciously, but they sense that you are not reacting in the usual way. This can reduce their defensiveness. It can create a different kind of exchange, one that is less tense, more open, more grounded. There is also a deeper layer to this practice. Listening beneath words requires you to set aside your immediate interpretation. It asks you to pause your judgment, to allow the moment to unfold without rushing to conclusions. This pause is similar to the sacred pause you learned earlier, but it is applied to listening. You hear the words, but you do not immediately respond. You allow space. You observe the tone. You notice the emotion. You feel the energy behind what is being said. This awareness gives you more information. It shows you the full picture, not just the surface. With this fuller understanding, your response becomes more aligned, more accurate, more patient. There is also something important about how this practice affects misunderstandings. Many conflicts arise not from what is said, but from how it is interpreted. Two people can hear the same words and experience them differently. One hears criticism, another hears concern. One hears rejection, another hears honesty. These differences come from interpretation. When you listen beneath words, you reduce the chance of misunderstanding. You are not reacting only to your interpretation. You are considering the possibility that there is more to the message. This reduces conflict. It creates clarity. It allows you to respond in a way that is more connected to reality. There is also a connection between this practice and empathy. When you listen deeply, you begin to feel what the other person is experiencing. Not in a way that overwhelms you, but in a way that informs your response. You begin to see their perspective. You begin to understand their condition. This understanding creates empathy, and empathy supports patience. It allows you to remain calm even when the situation is difficult. It allows you to respond with care instead of reaction. There is also something important about how this practice affects your own communication. When you experience someone listening to you deeply, you become more aware of how you speak. You begin to express yourself more clearly, more thoughtfully, more honestly. This awareness improves your interactions. It creates a cycle of understanding. You listen deeply. Others feel heard. They respond more openly. You continue to listen. This cycle builds connection. It reduces tension. It supports calm. There is also a deeper level to this understanding. Words are shaped by thoughts, but thoughts are influenced by emotions, and emotions are influenced by experiences. When you listen beneath words, you are not just hearing the present moment. You are sensing the layers behind it, the history, the patterns, the conditions. This does not mean you analyze everything. It means you remain open to the complexity of human experience. This openness reduces judgment. It creates space for understanding. It allows you to stay patient even when the situation is not clear. There is also something important about how this practice affects your sense of self. When you are reactive, you often take things personally. You see words as directed at you. You feel the need to defend yourself. But when you listen beneath words, you see that much of what is said is not about you. It is about the speaker's experience. This reduces the sense of personal attack. It allows you to remain steady. You are no longer pulled into every interaction. You are able to observe without becoming entangled. This detachment is not cold, it is clear. It allows you to stay connected without losing your balance. There is also a practical aspect to this practice. When you respond to what is beneath the words, your actions become more effective. You are not addressing only the surface issue. You are addressing the underlying condition. This leads to better outcomes, better communication, better understanding. For example, if someone speaks with irritation, reacting to their tone may create conflict. But responding to the stress behind their tone may create calm. This shift changes the direction of the interaction. It turns potential conflict into connection. There is also something important about how this practice affects your patience over time. The more you listen deeply, the less you react quickly. You become accustomed to pausing, to observing, to understanding. This habit strengthens your patience. It becomes part of your natural response. You no longer feel the need to react immediately. You allow space, and in that space, your awareness guides you. This awareness is stable. It does not change with every interaction. It remains, and it supports your calm. There is also a sense of peace that comes from this. When you are not reacting to every word, your mind becomes quieter. You are not constantly analyzing, not constantly defending, not constantly reacting. You are present, you are aware, you are calm. This calm is not forced. It arises from understanding, from seeing clearly, from listening deeply. And as this understanding grows, you begin to notice something else. Even when you listen beneath words, even when you understand the layers behind what is being said, there are still moments when life slows down in unexpected ways, moments when things do not move as planned, when delays appear, when progress feels paused. And in those moments, another opportunity for patience begins to reveal itself, not as an obstacle, but as a training ground, a place where your calm can deepen even further. And once you begin to see it this way, delays will no longer feel like interruptions, they will feel like invitations. And as you begin to listen beneath words, to hear what is not being said as clearly as what is, something else becomes easier to notice. Life does not always move at the speed you expect. Even when your mind is calm, even when your understanding is deep, there are moments when everything seems to slow down. A response does not come, a plan is delayed, a result takes longer than you hoped, and in that stillness, something inside you starts to move again. A quiet restlessness, a subtle discomfort, a feeling that something should be happening but is not. This is where many people lose their peace, not because something bad has happened, but because nothing is happening. Delays have a unique way of testing patience. They do not arrive with loud disruption. They come quietly, stretching time, creating space that feels empty or uncertain. And in that space, the mind begins to react. It fills the silence with thoughts. It creates urgency. It imagines outcomes. It begins to resist the moment. But what if that space is not empty? What if it is a place where something important can grow? Delays are often seen as interruptions, but they can also be seen as opportunities. Opportunities to return to awareness, opportunities to observe your reactions, opportunities to deepen your calm. When a delay appears, the first reaction is often frustration. The mind says, "This should not be happening." It compares the current moment to an expectation. It focuses on what is missing instead of what is present. This comparison creates tension. But if you shift your perspective, the delay changes. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening?" you begin to ask, "What is this moment showing me?" This question opens the door to awareness. It turns the delay into a teacher. It shows you how your mind reacts when things do not move as planned. It reveals the patterns of impatience. It highlights the areas where your control is still strong. When you see this clearly, the delay becomes useful. It becomes a training ground, a place where you can practice staying calm without external movement, a place where you can observe without needing immediate results. This practice strengthens your patience, because real patience is not tested when things move smoothly. It is tested when they do not. There is also something important about how delays affect your sense of time. When you are engaged in activity, time feels fast. When you are waiting, time feels slow. This difference is not in time itself. It is in your perception. The mind becomes more aware of time when there is nothing to fill it, and this awareness can create discomfort. But this discomfort is not caused by time. It is caused by your relationship with it. When you resist the delay, time feels heavier. When you accept it, time feels lighter. This acceptance does not mean you stop caring about progress. It means you allow the moment to be as it is. You stop measuring every second. You stop counting every minute. You return to the present. This return changes the experience. The delay is no longer something to endure. It becomes something to experience. You begin to notice what is happening around you. You notice your breath. You notice your body. You notice the environment. This awareness fills the space that felt empty. It creates presence, and presence brings calm. There is also a deeper layer to this understanding. Delays often reveal how much you rely on constant movement. When things are progressing, you feel in control, you feel productive, you feel aligned, but when movement stops, you feel unsettled. This shows that your calm is connected to external activity. When activity pauses, your calm is challenged. This is where the practice becomes important, learning to remain calm even when nothing is happening, learning to be present without needing constant movement. This is a form of inner stability. It shows that your peace does not depend on external conditions. It comes from your awareness, from your ability to stay with the moment. This stability grows over time. Each delay becomes an opportunity to strengthen it. Each pause becomes a chance to return to yourself. There is also something important about how delays affect your expectations. When you expect things to move quickly, delays feel like obstacles. But when you understand that timing is not always under your control, your expectations soften. You allow for variation. You allow for uncertainty. This flexibility reduces frustration. It allows you to adapt. It supports patience. There is also a connection between delays and control. When you are attached to controlling outcomes, delays feel threatening. They interrupt your plans. They challenge your expectations. But when you release some of that attachment, delays become easier to handle. You are not forcing everything to happen on your timeline. You are allowing things to unfold. This allowance creates ease. It reduces tension. It allows you to remain calm. There is also something important about how delays affect your emotions. When you resist a delay, frustration builds. It creates a sense of urgency. It pushes you to act, even when there is nothing to act on. But when you accept the delay, the emotional intensity decreases. You are not adding resistance. You are allowing the moment. This reduces suffering. It allows the emotion to settle. There is also a sense of trust that develops when you work with delays instead of against them. You begin to trust that not everything needs to happen immediately. You begin to trust that time has its own rhythm. You begin to trust that clarity will come when it is ready. This trust reduces anxiety. It reduces the need to control every detail. It allows you to relax, to stay present, to remain calm. There is also something important about how delays can deepen your awareness. When things are moving quickly, it is easy to remain on the surface. You focus on tasks. You move from one thing to another. But when there is a delay, you have time to observe, to reflect, to notice what is happening inside you. This observation leads to understanding. You begin to see your patterns more clearly. You begin to recognize your reactions. You begin to understand your mind. This understanding is valuable. It helps you grow. It helps you develop patience. It helps you remain calm in future situations. There is also a practical aspect to this practice. When you remain calm during delays, you are more prepared when things start moving again. Your mind is clear. Your body is relaxed. You are not carrying tension. This allows you to act more effectively, more precisely, more calmly. This improves your outcomes. It reduces mistakes. It creates better results. There is also something important about how delays affect your relationships. When you are impatient, it shows. You may become short. You may react quickly. You may create tension. But when you remain calm, your presence is steady. You are more patient with others, more understanding, more open. This creates better communication, better connection, better interactions. There is also a deeper sense of peace that comes from this practice, a peace that is not dependent on constant movement, a peace that remains even when things are slow. This peace is stable. It does not change with external conditions. It comes from your awareness, from your ability to stay present, from your willingness to allow. This willingness is what transforms delays into training grounds. Instead of seeing them as interruptions, you see them as opportunities, opportunities to practice, opportunities to grow, opportunities to deepen your calm. Over time, this perspective becomes natural. You no longer react to delays with frustration. You respond with awareness. You remain steady. You remain calm. And as this continues, something else begins to appear. Even when you can stay calm during delays, even when you can remain present in stillness, there are moments when your body reacts before your awareness fully arrives. Moments when something happens quickly, and your reaction feels automatic. You've just walked through something deeper than simple patience. You've learned to pause before reacting, to see anger without becoming it, to let thoughts pass without grabbing them, to stop needing to win, to release control, to soften your view when life feels harsh, to stay balanced between holding in and exploding, to meet yourself with compassion, to wait without resentment, to trust that everything passes, to listen beyond words, to use delays as training, and to understand your own body instead of fighting it. This is not just knowledge, this is a way of living, because staying calm is not about forcing yourself to be quiet on the outside. It's about becoming steady on the inside. And once that steadiness grows, life may still test you, but it will no longer shake you the same way. Something in you will remain still. Something in you will remain clear. Something in you will remain free. If you made it this far, write in the comments, "I choose calm." Not because everything is perfect, but because you are learning to be. And if this helped you even a little, subscribe to the channel and stay with me on this journey. Because the more you practice this, the more unshakable you become. Stay calm, stay aware. I'll see you in the next one.